The courtroom fell silent as Sheriff Donovan slammed his fist on the witness stand, his face contorted with rage, as the handsome stranger in the three-piece suit calmly placed a USB drive on the judge's bench. "This security footage shows you planting evidence in Ellie's apartment the night before her arrest, Sheriff," said the stranger, his eyes never leaving Donovan's increasingly pale face. What nobody in that courtroom knew was that Marcus Reed, the charming lawyer, who had appeared from nowhere to defend the single-mother waitress facing 20 years, wasn't a lawyer at all, but a brilliant conman with his own score to settle against the corrupt sheriff who had destroyed countless lives in their small town. What dark secret from Marcus's past connected him to this small-town corruption, and how far would he go to bring justice to those who had been wronged? If this story touches your heart, comment below with your thoughts, like and subscribe to our channel, and share any similar stories of unexpected redemption you've experienced in your own life. The sleek black Audi slowed as it entered the town limits of Millfield. Behind the wheel, Marcus Reed adjusted his designer sunglasses, taking in the faded storefronts and weary faces that lined Main Street. 15 years had passed since he'd left this place, but little had changed. Except him. He parked outside. Ellie's Diner, a quaint establishment with a flickering neon sign. Inside, the usual breakfast crowd had been replaced by hushed conversations and concerned glances. Marcus slid into a booth, ordering coffee from a waitress whose red-rimmed eyes suggested recent tears. "Quite a commotion here yesterday," he said casually, stirring sugar into his cup. The waitress paused. "You heard about Ellie?" "Just bits and pieces." "Something about an arrest?" "Sheriff Donovan dragged her out in handcuffs during the lunch rush. Said they found drugs in her apartment." She shook her head. "I've known Ellie for 10 years. She wouldn't touch the stuff, especially with Sophie depending on her." Marcus nodded sympathetically. "Sophie?" "Her daughter, 8 years old and smart as a whip, now staying with old Mrs. Jenkins next door while they figure things out." As the waitress moved to other tables, Marcus observed the diner patrons. Their conversations painted a clear picture. Ellie Madison was beloved, a hard-working single mother who volunteered at the school despite working double shifts. Nobody believed the charges. Marcus left a generous tip and stepped outside, pulling out his phone to make a call. "I found her," he said quietly. Another one of Donovan's targets. The voice on the other end was concerned. "You sure about this, Marcus? Getting personal will complicate things." "It's already personal," Marcus replied, watching as a sheriff's department cruiser slowly drove past. "Has been for 15 years. He ended the call and walked toward the county courthouse, a grandiose building that seemed out of place in the struggling town. Inside, he reviewed the arrest record for Ellie Madison with practiced efficiency, noting the specifics of the charges: possession with intent to distribute, evidence of packaging materials, digital scale, all conveniently found in her apartment while she was working. Classic Donovan, he thought, the same setup he'd used dozens of times before. Later that afternoon, Marcus straightened his tie and approached the county jail. He carried a leather briefcase containing nothing but blank legal pads and a few pens, props for the role he was about to play. "I'm here to see Ellie Madison," he told the deputy at the desk. "I'm her attorney." The deputy looked skeptical. "She's got a public defender assigned already." Marcus smiled confidently. "Not anymore. I've been privately retained." He slid a business card across the counter. Marcus Reed, attorney at law, complete with a prestigious Boston address and bar association number that would check out in the system, thanks to his technical team's handiwork. 20 minutes later, he sat across from Ellie Madison in the visitation room. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes betraying her sleepless night. Despite this, there was a quiet dignity in her posture. "I didn't request a new lawyer," she said bluntly. "You didn't have to," Marcus replied. "I'm here because what happened to you has happened before. Sheriff Donovan has a pattern and I'm building a case." Ellie studied him suspiciously. "Who's paying you? Consider it pro bono for now. Nobody does anything for free in Millfield," she said, crossing her arms. "Especially not for someone facing drug charges." Marcus leaned forward. "Let me be clear, Miss Madison. I don't believe you're guilty. Neither does anyone in town. The question is whether we can prove Donovan framed you." For the first time, a flicker of hope crossed her face, quickly replaced by resignation. "You don't know what you're up against," she whispered. "Donovan owns this town. The judges, the prosecutors, even some of the defense attorneys." Marcus allowed himself a slight smile. "Fortunately, I'm not from this town." He opened his briefcase and removed a legal pad. "Now tell me everything that happened, from the moment they arrived at your door." As she spoke, Marcus took notes, his mind already formulating a plan. What Ellie didn't know, what nobody in Millfield knew, was that Marcus Reed had been planning this moment for years, meticulously tracking Sheriff Donovan's corruption from afar, waiting for the perfect opportunity to return and dismantle the empire that had destroyed his family. And Ellie Madison, with her spotless reputation and vulnerable daughter, was exactly the case he needed to bring it all crashing down. "I don't understand why you're doing this," Ellie's voice echoed in the small visitation room during their second meeting. Her initial suspicion had hardened rather than softened overnight. "People don't just show up offering free legal help." Marcus maintained his professional demeanour. "I told you, I'm building a case against Donovan. Your situation fits a pattern, and that's enough for you to risk your career. Taking on the most powerful man in the county?" She leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "What's your real angle?" Marcus had prepared for this question, but still hesitated. Too much truth would expose him. Too little would lose her trust. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when corrupt officials target vulnerable people." He kept his tone measured. "The public defender assigned to you has lost his last 8 cases against Donovan. You deserve better representation." Ellie's shoulders slumped. "It doesn't matter. They found the drugs in my apartment. My fingerprints are probably all over them." "Were they? Did you touch any of the evidence they claim to have found?" "No, but—" "Then your fingerprints won't be on them. Unless," Marcus said pointedly, "they were planted." A heavy silence hung between them. Finally, Ellie spoke in a whisper. "Sophie's birthday is next month. She's turning 9. Her voice cracked. "If I take the plea deal they offered, I'll still be in prison when she graduates high school. There." "Won't be a plea deal because you're not going to prison," Marcus stated with such conviction that Ellie looked up in surprise. "Now I need to know everything about your routine, your apartment, who has access, and any interaction you've had with Donovan or his deputies before the arrest." After the jail visit, Marcus drove to the modest apartment complex where Ellie and Sophie lived. The door to Unit 14B still had police tape across it, but the neighbouring unit's door opened as he approached. An elderly woman with silver hair and alert eyes appeared. "You're not from around here," she observed, a small girl partially hidden behind her floral housecoat. "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm Marcus Reed, Ellie's attorney." He crouched down to the child's eye level. "And you must be Sophie." The girl regarded him cautiously, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. She had her mother's blue eyes and the same stubborn tilt to her chin. "Is my mum coming home soon?" she asked directly. Marcus didn't sugarcoat his answer. "That's what I'm working on. It might take a little time, but I promise I'm doing everything I can." Mrs. Jenkins invited him in, her apartment filled with the comforting scent of baking and decades of accumulated trinkets. Sophie disappeared into the guest room while the old woman prepared tea. "Sheriff's men were back this morning," Mrs. Jenkins said quietly, setting down mismatched teacups. "Searching through her things again, said they needed additional evidence." Marcus frowned. "Did they have a warrant?" "Probably. Nobody questions Donovan's paperwork around here." She stirred her tea vigorously. "Been that way since he took office 12 years ago. Before that he was just a deputy with ambitions. And Ellie, has she had problems with him before?" Mrs. Jenkins hesitated. "Not directly, but about 6 months ago, he started coming into the diner regularly, sitting in her section, leaving big tips. Ellie mentioned he'd asked her out a few times. She always declined. Marcus filed this information away. Rejection as motive. It fit Donovan's profile." Sophie returned, carrying a drawing. She placed it on the coffee table between them. It showed 2 stick figures, one tall with yellow hair, one small, standing beside what appeared to be a diner. "That's me and Mom," she explained unnecessarily. "I'm making pictures for when she comes home." Marcus studied the child's serious face. "She'll love them. Can you tell me something, Sophie? Did anyone strange come to your apartment before the police arrived?" Sophie considered this. "The maintenance man came, but he didn't fix anything. Mum was at work." "Do you remember what day?" "The day before the police came. He had a toolbox but didn't use any tools. I was doing homework." Mrs. Jenkins looked surprised. "I didn't know about any maintenance request." Marcus pulled out his phone, bringing up a photo. "Was it this man?" The image showed one of Donovan's deputies in civilian clothes. Sophie nodded immediately. "That's him." He didn't smile at all. Marcus shared a meaningful look with Mrs. Jenkins. "Sophie, you're very observant. That's going to help your mum a lot." As he prepared to leave, Mrs. Jenkins walked him to the door while Sophie returned to her drawings. "Whatever you're planning," the old woman whispered, "be careful. Donovan doesn't just bend the law, He breaks people who get in his way. Marcus nodded grimly. I'm counting on him to try. Later, parked outside the sheriff's office, Marcus made another call. I need a full background workup on Judge Harrison and Prosecutor Phillips, he instructed. Bank records, properties, unusual transactions. And get me everything on Deputy James Taylor, he's our plant man. As night fell over Millfield, Marcus sat in his hotel room reviewing his notes. The pieces were aligning. Donovan's pattern was becoming clear. Single mothers, modest means, no powerful connections, all targeted after some perceived slight to his ego. What Donovan didn't realise was that in choosing Ellie Madison, he had made a critical mistake. Not because Marcus was now involved, but because in Sophie, he had created a witness, and in Mrs. Jenkins, he had overlooked a watchful neighbour with nothing to lose. The con was taking shape in Marcus's mind, not his usual game of misdirection and quick profit, but something more elaborate and far more satisfying. A long con designed not to take money, but to deliver justice, and perhaps, finally, peace. Sheriff William Donovan's office sat on the top floor of the Millfield County Justice Building, a corner suite with large windows overlooking the town square. Inside, mounted deer heads and framed commendations competed for wall space. The sheriff himself sat behind a massive oak desk, his uniform crisp despite the late hour, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. "Taylor," he barked as the deputy entered. "Tell me you've got something on this new lawyer." Deputy James Taylor shifted uncomfortably. "Marcus Reed. Boston attorney, impressive credentials, bar association checks out. No obvious connection to Madison or Millfield." Donovan swirled his drink. "Nobody comes to Millfield without a reason. Dig deeper." "Yes, sir." Taylor hesitated. "The girl, Madison's daughter, she might have seen me in the apartment." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Might have? She was there." "Doing homework. I didn't think she noticed me." Donovan slammed his glass down. "You didn't think? That's your problem, Taylor. You don't think." He pointed a thick finger at the deputy. "Keep an eye on the kid and the old lady she's staying with. Make sure they understand the consequences of talking too much." After Taylor left, Donovan made a call. "Judge Harrison. Sorry for the late hour. Yes, it's about the Madison case. We've got an out-of-town lawyer poking around. I need you to expedite things. Make sure it stays in your courtroom." "Good. I'll make it worth your while." Across town, Marcus sat in his parked car outside the Millfield Country Club, watching through binoculars as Donovan arrived for his weekly poker game. The sheriff was greeted warmly by the mayor, a bank president, and 2 county commissioners. Marcus photographed each interaction, noting the deference shown to Donovan. As the men disappeared inside, Marcus checked his watch and made another call. "How's our digital footprint coming?" he asked. "Solid," came the reply. "Reed's law license and Harvard credentials are in all the right databases, even created court. Appearances and case histories going back 8 years. Anyone checks, you're legit. And the other matter? Donovan's financials are interesting. He makes $85,000 a year as sheriff, but somehow maintains a lake house, his kids' Ivy League tuition, and a classic car collection. Money's coming from somewhere. Follow it," Marcus instructed, "and put a rush on those background checks for the judge and prosecutor." The next morning, Marcus visited the county clerk's office, requesting records of similar drug cases over the past 5 years. The clerk, a nervous man with thinning hair, seemed reluctant until Marcus mentioned a Freedom of Information request. The pattern was even clearer on paper. 28 cases with nearly identical circumstances. Single women, mostly mothers, all arrested based on anonymous tips, all with drugs found in their homes while they were away, all prosecuted by Phillips, all presided over by Judge Harrison, and all resulting in guilty verdicts or plea deals. Marcus took copious notes, photographing key documents. As he worked, he noticed a young deputy watching him from across the room, poorly disguising his surveillance. Later, at a coffee shop, Marcus was approached by a woman in her early 30s, her server's uniform partially hidden under a jacket. "You're the lawyer helping Ellie?" she asked tentatively, sliding into the booth across from him. Marcus nodded, closing his notebook. "I'm Diane. I worked with Ellie until last year." She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "The same thing happened to my sister in 2022. Anonymous tip. Drugs found in her apartment. She took the plea deal. 3 years. Her kids are with our mother now." "Did she have any run-ins with Donovan before her arrest?" Diane nodded. "He asked her to go to the Founders' Day dance. When she said no, he started having deputies pull her over, giving her tickets for nothing. 2 weeks later, she was arrested." By day's end, Marcus had spoken with 5 more people with similar stories. None had come forward before, fearing retaliation. All described a town living under Donovan's shadow, a place where traffic tickets, building permits, and even job opportunities depended on staying in the sheriff's good graces. That evening, Marcus drove past Donovan's substantial home on the outskirts of town. The property was well lit, security cameras visible at strategic points. A deputy's cruiser was parked outside. Personal security courtesy of taxpayers. Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed Vanessa. Our mutual friend filled me in. A smooth, female voice said without preamble. You're playing a dangerous game, Marcus. I'm just pursuing justice, he replied. Since when do you care about justice? You're a conman, not a crusader. Marcus watched as Donovan emerged from his house, kissed a well-dressed blonde woman goodbye, and climbed into his personal vehicle, a restored 1967 Mustang. People change, Marcus said quietly. Not that much, Vanessa countered. What's really going on? Marcus didn't answer immediately, tracking the Mustang as it pulled away. You remember that story I told you once? About my mother, the one who died in prison? Yes. What I never told you was who put her there. Marcus started his engine. Donovan was a deputy back then. Used the same playbook, planted drugs, rigged trial. By the time I aged out of foster care, he was already sheriff. The line was silent. For a moment. This isn't a con, is it? It's revenge. It's both, Marcus replied, following Donovan's car at a discreet distance. The best cons have personal motivation. Makes the payoff sweeter. Just be careful your emotions don't cloud your judgment. That's how mistakes happen. As Marcus ended the call, he watched Donovan's car pull up to a modest house on the edge of town. A woman emerged, not his wife, and greeted him with a kiss. Another piece of the puzzle, leverage if needed. Donovan had built his kingdom on fear and corruption, careful to maintain a public image of law and order while privately breaking every rule. He had judges in his pocket, deputies as enforcers, and politicians as cover. But even the strongest kingdoms have weaknesses, and Marcus had just begun to find them. The cemetery was empty as Marcus placed fresh flowers on the simple grave marker. Catherine Reed, 1970-2009. Beloved mother. The words were weathered now, 15 years of seasons gradually erasing her memory from the world, but not from him. Marcus knelt, brushing fallen leaves from the stone. I'm back, Mom, he whispered. Finally, the memories came flooding back. Not the pleasant ones he struggled to recall, but the nightmare that had defined his life. He was 13 again, doing homework at the kitchen table of their small apartment above the laundromat where his mother worked. Catherine Reed was a single mother, struggling but determined to provide for her son. She had moved them to Millfield for a fresh start after his father abandoned them. The pounding on the door came after midnight. His mother, confused and frightened, opening it to find 3 deputies with a search warrant. Young Deputy Donovan, already arrogant with his badge still new, directing the others to tear apart their home. Found it, one called from his mother's bedroom, producing a bag of white powder from her dresser drawer. That's not mine, Catherine had protested, panic rising in her voice. I've never seen that before. 13-year-old Marcus, watching helplessly as they handcuffed his mother. Donovan smirking at him. Looks like you'll be needing a new home, kid. The trial had been quick. Judge Harrison, younger then but already corrupt, denied bail. The public defender barely spoke. His mother, bewildered in her prison jumpsuit, mouthing, I love you, as they led her away. Foster care followed, 3 different homes in 5 years. The Millfield system was underfunded and overwhelmed. Nobody noticed when Marcus began skipping school, teaching himself more valuable skills, how to pick locks, forge signatures, manipulate systems. He learned that his mother had died of pneumonia in the women's correctional facility 3 years into her 8-year sentence. No one had told him. No one had thought he needed to know. Marcus discovered the truth in bits and pieces over the years. His mother wasn't the first single parent Donovan had targeted. The deputy had been building his reputation as a drug enforcement specialist, racking up convictions to advance his career. Easy targets made for impressive statistics. By 18, Marcus had perfected his first con, a sophisticated identity theft scheme targeting the wealthy weekenders who vacationed near his last foster home. It funded his escape from Millfield and his education in the art of deception. Now, 15 years later, he was Marcus Reed, or at least that's who his documents claimed he was. He had dozens of identities, each crafted for specific purposes, but this one felt most authentic, perhaps because it incorporated his mother's real surname. Rising from the grave, Marcus noticed a groundskeeper watching him from a distance. Time to go. His sentimentality had already kept him here too long. Back in his hotel room, Marcus spread his research across the bed. Photographs of Donovan with local officials, financial records showing suspicious deposits, case files of other women who had been framed, grainy images from 15 years ago, newspaper clippings of his mother's arrest. His phone buzzed with a text from his tech contact. Harrison deposits $5,000 cash monthly. Account in Cayman Islands. Phillips bought vacation home last year. No. Mortgage. The corruption ran deep. The judge, the prosecutor, at least 4 deputies, all benefiting from Donovan's system of manufactured crimes and predetermined outcomes. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus quickly gathered the materials, concealing them before answering. Deputy James Taylor stood in the hallway, his posture stiff with official purpose. "Mr. Reed? Sheriff Donovan would like to meet with you." "Unofficially," Marcus maintained. A neutral expression. "I was planning to introduce myself at the courthouse tomorrow. Sheriff prefers to handle certain matters more privately." Taylor's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. "Of course. Lead the way." Marcus followed the deputy to a black SUV with tinted windows. As they drove, he noted their route, mentally mapping alternative ways back if needed. They arrived at an upscale steakhouse outside town limits. Inside a private dining room, Sheriff Donovan sat alone at a table set for 2, a bottle of expensive bourbon between them. "Mr. Reed," Donovan said, standing to shake Marcus's hand with crushing pressure. "Welcome to Millfield. Small town for such big city talent." Marcus matched his grip. "Interesting cases can be found anywhere, Sheriff." "Indeed." Donovan poured 2 glasses of bourbon. "I always like to meet attorneys who visit our jurisdiction. Professional courtesy." The implied threat wasn't subtle. Marcus accepted the drink but didn't taste it. "I appreciate the hospitality. Tell me," Donovan leaned back, studying Marcus with cold blue eyes, "what brings a Boston attorney to defend a small-town waitress with a drug problem?" "I don't believe Ms. Madison has a drug problem." Donovan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The evidence suggests otherwise. Evidence can be misleading or manufactured." The sheriff's expression hardened. "Careful, counselor. Accusations against law enforcement are taken seriously here." "As they should be everywhere," Marcus maintained eye contact. "Just as the rights of the accused should be." Donovan drained his glass. "Let me be direct. The Madison case is open and shut. She'll take a plea, serve her time, and life in Millfield will continue as it should. Your presence complicates things unnecessarily. I believe in my client's innocence. Your belief is irrelevant. The facts are established." Marcus set down his untouched drink. "Then you shouldn't be concerned about her having proper representation." Donovan studied him for a long moment. "You know, I've been sheriff here for 12 years. Before that, deputy for 7. I've seen lawyers like you come and go. Ambitious types looking to make names for themselves on injustice cases." He leaned forward. "None of them lasted long in Millfield." "Is that a threat, Sheriff?" "An observation." Donovan's smile returned. "Small towns can be unwelcoming to outsiders who don't understand local customs." Marcus stood. "Then I'll have to work on my cultural sensitivity. If there's nothing else." As Marcus turned to leave, Donovan called after him. "You look familiar, Mr. Reed. Have we met before?" Marcus paused at the door. "I don't believe so, Sheriff. I'm sure I would remember." Walking out into the cool night air, Marcus took a deep breath. Donovan didn't recognize him. The frightened 13-year-old boy had vanished long ago, but the encounter had reinforced his resolve. This wasn't just about Ellie Madison anymore. It was about all of them. His mother, Diane's sister, and every other victim of Donovan's corrupt system. And now it was personal. "I need concrete evidence, not just theory," Marcus explained to Ellie during their 3rd jail meeting. "You said Deputy Taylor was the one who arrested you?" Ellie nodded, her complexion paler after a week in county lockup. "He and another deputy I didn't recognize. They had a warrant, showed it to me when I got home from work, said they received an anonymous tip. And you'd never seen anything suspicious in your apartment before they found the drugs." "Never." Her eyes flashed with anger. "I wouldn't have that stuff anywhere near Sophie." Marcus made notes. "The preliminary hearing is in 3 days. Prosecutor Phillips will present their evidence, and Judge Harrison will decide if there's enough to proceed to trial." "Which there will be," Ellie said bitterly. "Everyone knows Harrison does whatever Donovan wants." "Usually," Marcus agreed. "But this time might be different." He didn't elaborate further, not wanting to give her false hope. Back at his hotel, Marcus initiated a series of carefully orchestrated moves. First, a call to his oldest contact in the con world. Jackson, I need documentation that will hold up to serious scrutiny, not just digital, physical credentials with history, FBI level. Or corporate level, the gruff voice asked. FBI adjacent, something that suggests federal oversight without stating it explicitly. Next, a video call with his tech specialist, a former black hat hacker who now worked exclusively for Marcus. I need security camera footage from the county jail, specifically the evidence lockup, Marcus explained. And I need to know if there are cameras in the apartment complex where Ellie Madison lives. The young man on the screen frowned. Jail systems are closed circuit. I'd need physical access. What about traffic cams near the complex? That I can get. City systems are embarrassingly easy to access. Marcus's third call was to Vanessa, his former partner in both cons and life. I need you in Millfield, he said without preamble. And hello to you too, she replied dryly. What role am I playing this time? Federal oversight. Something that makes Donovan nervous, but doesn't trigger immediate verification calls. Department of Justice Special Audit? Those can stay under wraps, for weeks before formal notification. Perfect. How soon can you be here? Depends. Is this a paid gig or another of your personal crusades? Marcus hesitated. Both. I'll make it worth your while. You always say that. Vanessa sighed. I'll be there tomorrow. Send me the background. I need to study. With his team mobilizing, Marcus turned to his riskiest move. He drove to the Millfield Sheriff's Department, parking prominently in the visitor's lot. Inside, he requested a meeting with Deputy Michael Reynolds, a young officer Marcus had identified as potentially disillusioned with Donovan's regime. Mr. Reed, Reynolds said warily when they met in the public interview room. What can I do? For you, Marcus placed his business card on the table. I understand you've been with the department for 3 years. Before that, you were military police. Reynolds nodded cautiously. That's right. I also understand you were first on scene at the Tanner accident last year. The report says you attempted life-saving measures before paramedics arrived. The deputy's expression softened slightly. Just did what anyone would do. Not everyone, Marcus countered. Janet Tanner was the wife of a man who had publicly criticised Sheriff Donovan at a town council meeting. Some might have hesitated. Reynolds' eyes narrowed. What are you implying? Nothing about you, Marcus assured him. I'm suggesting that you're a good cop in a department that doesn't always prioritise good policing. The deputy glanced at the observation window, though no one appeared to be watching. You shouldn't be saying these things here. Marcus slid a burner phone across the table. My number's programmed in. If you ever want to talk about the Madison case or any others that didn't feel right. Reynolds didn't touch the phone. I could report this conversation. You could, Marcus agreed, standing to leave. But I don't think you will, because good cops eventually have to choose between their badge and their conscience. That evening, Marcus visited Mrs. Jenkins and Sophie again, bringing take-out dinner and a small sketchbook for the child. The police came back yesterday, Mrs. Jenkins told him while Sophie was in the other room, asking if she'd been talking about what she saw. It scared her. Marcus's jaw tightened. Did they threaten her? Not in words, but their meaning was clear enough. I'll handle it, Marcus promised. In the meantime, I've arranged for a security system to be installed tomorrow, and I'd like you both to have these. He handed her 2 small devices that resembled key fobs. Panic buttons. Press it if anyone makes you uncomfortable. It alerts me immediately. Sophie returned, proudly showing Marcus her latest drawing, a courtroom scene where a stick figure with spiky hair appeared to be pointing accusingly at another figure with a star on its chest. Is that supposed to be me? Marcus asked, pointing. To the spiky-haired figure. Sophie nodded. You're helping Mum in court. Mrs. Jenkins explained how it works. Marcus studied the child's earnest face. Sophie, do you remember when the maintenance man came to your apartment? Did he go into your mum's bedroom? Yes. And the bathroom. He was in there a long time. Did he have anything with him besides? His toolbox. Sophie thought for a moment. A plastic bag. From the grocery store. Marcus exchanged looks with Mrs. Jenkins. You're very observant, Sophie. That's a great quality. As he prepared to leave, his burner phone vibrated. Unknown number. Reed. He answered once in his car. It's Reynolds. The deputy's voice was barely above a whisper. Meet me at Pinewood Park, north entrance, 1 hour. The park was deserted when Marcus arrived. Reynolds was already there, sitting on a bench in civilian clothes, constantly scanning. Their surroundings. I could lose my job for this, he said as Marcus sat beside him. Or you could be doing exactly what a good officer should. Reynolds looked troubled. The Madison case bothers me. Taylor was bragging about it before the arrest, said Donovan had another special project for him. This wasn't the first. No. There's been others. Women mostly. Always the same setup. Anonymous tip. Evidence found while they're away from home. And no one questions this. Reynolds laughed bitterly. Question Donovan? Last deputy who did that found himself responding to domestic disputes alone. No backup coming. Marcus let this sink in. I need to know about the evidence in Ellie's case. Where it's kept. How it's logged. The deputy hesitated. You're asking me to compromise an investigation. I'm asking you to ensure justice is done. There's a difference. After a long moment, Reynolds made his decision. Evidence lockup is in the basement. Electronic keycard plus numeric code. Taylor logged the Madison evidence himself. Unusual protocol. And the drugs allegedly found in her apartment. Supposedly pre-packaged for distribution. Too neatly done. If you ask me. Most dealers aren't that organised. As they parted ways, Marcus handed Reynolds a sealed envelope. If anything happens to me, give this to a reporter named Christine Webber at the Capital City Times. Not before. The deputy nodded grimly. Be careful, Reed. Donovan doesn't just bend rules. He breaks people. Returning to his hotel, Marcus laid out the next phase of his plan. With Vanessa arriving tomorrow, Jackson's credentials in production, and Reynolds as an inside source, the pieces were coming together, but time was running short. The preliminary hearing was approaching, and Donovan wouldn't remain passive for long. The sheriff had already demonstrated his interest in Marcus. The next step would likely be more aggressive. Marcus checked his security measures one last time before sleep. Door wedged, escape route planned, sensitive materials encrypted. The Agusansi. Con required perfect timing and flawless execution. One mistake could cost not just the case, but potentially Ellie's future, Sophie's safety, and his long-awaited justice. Do you have kids? Sophie asked, swinging her legs as she sat beside Marcus on Mrs. Jenkins' front porch. The evening air was cool, fireflies beginning to appear in the twilight. Marcus shook his head. No, I don't. Why not? I move around a lot. Not really settled anywhere. Sophie considered this with the seriousness only an 8-year-old could muster. That sounds lonely. Marcus smiled slightly. Sometimes it is. 3 days had passed since his meeting with Deputy Reynolds. The preliminary hearing was tomorrow, and Marcus had come to update Mrs. Jenkins on security measures, and to check on Sophie, though he wouldn't admit that was his primary concern. I made this for you. Sophie handed him a carefully folded paper. Inside was another drawing, this one showing Marcus, Ellie and Sophie holding hands in front of what appeared to be Ellie's diner. It's for when Mum comes home, Sophie explained. So you'll remember to visit us. Marcus studied the drawing, unexpectedly moved by the simple gesture. Thank you. I'll keep it safe. Mrs. Jenkins brought out lemonade, her arthritis making her movements slow but deliberate. Sophie, honey, why don't you get your mum's schedule book? Mr. Reed asked about her routine. When the child disappeared inside, Mrs. Jenkins lowered her voice. She's been having nightmares. Wakes up calling for her mother. Marcus's jaw tightened. The hearing is tomorrow. If everything goes as planned, we might be able to get Ellie released on bail. And if it doesn't, he didn't answer directly. I've made arrangements for increased security here. Don't open the door for anyone you don't know, especially deputies. Sophie returned with a worn planner. Mum writes everything in here, even my dentist appointments. Marcus paged through it carefully. Ellie's neat handwriting documented her life in precise detail. Work shifts, Sophie's school events, bill due dates, even grocery lists. It painted a picture of a meticulously organised single mother with no margin for error in her budget or schedule. Does your mum have any special hiding places? Marcus asked casually. Places she keeps important things? Sophie nodded. In her closet there's a loose floorboard. That's where she keeps Grandma's ring and my birth certificate. And under the sink in the bathroom there's a fake bottom in the cabinet. That's where the emergency money is. Marcus exchanged looks with Mrs. Jenkins. You're very observant, Sophie. Mum says I notice everything. Sometimes it makes her crazy. The girl smiled, briefly revealing the gap where she'd recently lost a tooth. Like when she gets a haircut and thinks I won't notice, but I always do. What about visitors? Did your mum have friends over often? Sophie shook her head. Not really. She works a lot. Sometimes Miss Diane comes over, or people from the diner if Mum is sick. What about men? Did any men visit your apartment? Marcus kept his tone neutral. The child wrinkled her nose. Just Mr. Patterson when the sink was leaking. And once the sheriff came by. Marcus tried not to react visibly. Sheriff Donovan? When was this? A few months ago. He brought flowers. But Mum didn't put them in water. She threw them away after he left. Mrs. Jenkins looked surprised. Ellie never mentioned that. She was really mad, Sophie continued. She said bad words when she thought I couldn't hear. Marcus made a note in his phone. What about the day before your mum was arrested? You mentioned the maintenance man came. What time was that? Sophie thought carefully. After school. Mum was still at work. Mrs. Jenkins was watching me, but I went home to get my science project. And that's when you saw him? Yes. He said he needed to check the bathroom pipes. I showed him where it was, then went back to get my project from. My room. Did you see what he was doing in the bathroom? Sophie hesitated. I peeked once. He was opening the medicine cabinet and taking pictures with his phone. I thought that was weird because pipes aren't in medicine cabinets. Marcus leaned forward. Sophie, this is very important. Did you see him put anything in the bathroom or your mum's room? I didn't see, but I heard drawers opening in mum's room. And when he left, his toolbox looked emptier. This was crucial information, exactly what Marcus needed to establish reasonable doubt about the origin of the drugs. A child's testimony could be compelling, especially one as articulate as Sophie. Would you be willing to tell a judge what you saw? To help your mum? Anxiety flashed across Sophie's face. Would the sheriff be there? Yes, but he couldn't hurt you. I'd make sure of that. Sophie twisted the hem of her shirt. Mum says always tell the truth, even when it's scary. Mrs. Jenkins put a protective arm around the child. Are you sure that's necessary, Mr. Reed? She's just a little girl. I wouldn't ask if there were another way, Marcus said quietly. But Sophie's testimony could be the difference between Ellie coming home or... He let the sentence hang unfinished. Sophie straightened her shoulders with sudden determination. I'll do it. I want Mum to come home. As twilight deepened into night, Marcus helped Sophie organise her mother's planner by date, asking casual questions about their routines and habits. The child revealed more than she realised. Important details about Donovan's interest in Ellie, the deputy's suspicious activities, and the timeline of events leading to the arrest. When Sophie finally grew tired, Mrs. Jenkins took her inside to prepare for bed. Marcus remained on the porch, reviewing his notes and mentally adjusting his strategy for the hearing. The front door opened softly, and Mrs. Jenkins reappeared. She's saying her prayers, the old woman said. Always ask God to keep her mother safe. Marcus nodded, uncomfortable with the emotional weight of the moment. You know, Mrs. Jenkins continued, settling into her rocking chair, I've been watching people in this town for 73 years. I can tell when someone's not being straight about who they are. Marcus tensed slightly. You're not just some lawyer from Boston, she said, her eyes sharp despite her age. There's something personal in this for you. I'm here to help Ellie, he said carefully. Yes, but why? Mrs. Jenkins rocked steadily. What's your connection to all this? Marcus was saved from answering by his phone's vibration. A text from Vanessa. In position. Meeting set with judge for 8 a.m. I should go, he said, rising. Big day tomorrow. Mrs. Jenkins didn't press further, but her knowing gaze followed him down the steps. Whatever your reasons, she called after him. That little girl believes in you, don't let her down. As Marcus drove away, Sophie's drawing safely tucked in his jacket pocket, he felt an unfamiliar weight of responsibility. This wasn't just another con, another score to settle. There was an innocent child's future at stake. A child who somehow trusted him despite barely knowing him. For the first time in years, Marcus wondered if he was up to the task. Vanessa Cole stepped into Judge Harrison's chambers precisely at 8 a.m., her charcoal suit impeccably tailored, credentials displayed prominently on a lanyard around her neck. The judge, a portly man with thinning grey hair and perpetually ruddy cheeks, looked up from his desk in confusion. Judge Harrison, she began, her tone professional but cool. I'm Auditor Cole, Department of Justice. I'm conducting a review of judicial procedures in counties receiving federal law enforcement grants. She placed a leather portfolio on his desk. Your courtroom has been randomly selected for observation. Harrison's complexion shifted from ruddy to pale. I wasn't notified of any review. Standard protocol, Vanessa replied smoothly. Advance notice can affect typical procedures. I'll be observing the Madison preliminary hearing this morning. That's a routine drug case, Harrison protested. Hardly worth federal attention. Vanessa opened her portfolio, revealing official-looking documents. We're particularly interested in cases involving evidence seized during warranted searches. Our metrics suggest some statistical anomalies in conviction rates for such cases in this jurisdiction. The implied threat was clear. Harrison swallowed visibly. Of course, he managed. My courtroom is open to proper oversight. Excellent. Vanessa smiled without warmth. One more thing. This review is confidential. Discussing it with anyone, including Sheriff Donovan, would compromise our methodology. As she left the chambers, Vanessa texted Marcus. Judge properly rattled. Across town, Marcus was meeting with his second associate, Jackson, in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse. Jackson, a heavy-set man with meticulous grooming and eyes that missed nothing, slid a manila envelope across the table. Federal credentials for both of you, he said quietly. DOJ Special Audit Division. Obscure. Enough that verification calls get routed to our answering service, but official enough to make locals nervous. The digital trail is in place if anyone does a basic background check. Marcus examined the contents. Badges, ID cards, business cards, even government credit cards that would work for surface-level transactions. What about the footage? Marcus asked. Jackson handed him a USB drive. Security camera video from the apartment complex entrance, showing Deputy Taylor arriving at 2:17 p.m. the day before the arrest, carrying a toolbox and a plastic grocery bag. He leaves 40 minutes later with just the toolbox. The timestamp and his face are clear. And the other item? Harder to get, Jackson admitted. But worth it. He produced a second USB drive. This contains footage from a traffic camera 3 blocks from the apartment, showing Taylor's cruiser parked there at the same time, when he was supposedly on patrol across town. The official log has him responding to a disturbance at the high school. Marcus nodded approval. This establishes he was off his assigned patrol route at Ellie's apartment when he claimed to be elsewhere. It's a start. What about the anonymous tip that led to the warrant? Working on it, Marcus replied. Deputy Reynolds is quietly looking into which dispatcher took the call. If we can prove it was manufactured, the entire case collapses. Jackson finished his coffee. You know, in our usual jobs, we'd be gone by now. Cash in hand, new identities, different state. This isn't our usual job. That's what worries me. Jackson leaned closer. You're getting emotionally involved. With the case, with the kid. That's dangerous in our line of work. Marcus didn't deny it. Sometimes the best cons are the ones where you actually care about the outcome, or the ones that get you killed. Jackson stood to leave. I'll be in the courtroom back row. If things go sideways, I'm your extraction plan. After Jackson departed, Marcus received a call from Deputy Reynolds. I accessed the dispatch logs, Reynolds said, his voice low. The anonymous tip about Madison came from a burner phone, but here's the interesting part. The same number called in tips for 3 other cases. All women, all resulting in Donovan's deputies finding drugs. Can you document that without raising flags? Already did. Left a copy in your hotel room. Under the desk lamp. You're taking a big risk, Deputy. Maybe it's time someone did. Reynolds paused. There's something else. The evidence log for Madison's case has discrepancies. The weight of the drugs logged at the scene is different from what's currently in lockup. Different how? Heavier now than when seized. Like something was added after the fact. This was potentially explosive. Evidence tampering would invalidate the entire case. Can you get documentation? Working on it. But be careful at the hearing today. Donovan knows something's up. He's been making calls all morning. Marcus's final preparation was a visit to Ellie at the jail. She looked marginally better than during their last meeting, a spark of hope returning to her eyes. Today's the day, Marcus said, keeping his voice low despite the privacy of the attorney room. What should I expect? Ellie asked. Judge Harrison will determine if there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. Normally, he'd rubber stamp anything Donovan brings him, but Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Let's just say the judge is feeling unusually attentive to proper procedure today, and if he still sends it to trial, then we fight. But I'm working on getting you released on bail regardless. Sophie needs you home. At the mention of her daughter, Ellie's composure briefly faltered. How is she? Strong. Like her mother. Marcus hesitated. Ellie, Sophie told me about Donovan bringing you flowers, about his interest in you. Why didn't you mention this? Ellie looked away. It seemed irrelevant. And embarrassing. It establishes motive. Donovan targeted you after you rejected him. He's the sheriff. Who would believe he'd abuse his power over something so petty? Anyone who knows men like him, Marcus replied. Power doesn't make men better. It just reveals who they already are. As their meeting concluded, Marcus gave Ellie final instructions. Let me do most of the talking. Don't react to anything Donovan or the prosecutor says, no matter how provocative. And if I seem to be taking an unexpected approach, trust that it's part of the plan. What plan exactly? Ellie asked. You've been vague about your strategy. Marcus chose his words carefully. Sometimes in law, like in chess, you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. Today might look like we're losing, but it's setting up our real move. Back at the courthouse, Marcus met briefly with Vanessa in an empty conference room. "Harrison's nervous," she reported. "He nearly jumped out of his skin when I mentioned statistical anomalies in conviction rates. If he's been taking bribes from Donovan, he's worried, we know." "Good," Marcus nodded. "And the prosecutor?" "Phillips got the same treatment. Federal audit. Confidential review. He's sweating too, but putting on a braver face. I'm betting Donovan has more leverage on Harrison than on Phillips. We need them uncertain, but not panicked. If they think they're already caught, they might do something desperate." Vanessa adjusted her fake federal credentials. "You still haven't told me exactly what game we're playing here. This isn't our usual approach, because it's not about money this time," Marcus replied. "It's about justice." Vanessa studied him carefully. "This is about your mother, isn't it? Donovan was involved in her case." Marcus didn't deny it. He was the deputy who planted the evidence. Same pattern, same result. So this is revenge. I prefer to think of it as long overdue accountability. Marcus checked his watch. "It's almost time. Take your position in the courtroom. Front row, directly in Harrison's line of sight. Make him feel watched." As Vanessa left, Marcus took a moment alone to centre himself. In his pocket, he felt Sophie's drawing, a tangible reminder of what was at stake. This wasn't just about settling an old score. It was about preventing history from repeating itself. About a little girl not growing up without her mother, as he had. With newfound resolve, Marcus gathered his materials and headed for the courtroom, where the first public act of his elaborate con was about to begin. Millfield's main courtroom was a study in faded grandeur, dark wood panelling, worn carpet, and brass fixtures that had lost their lustre decades ago. By 9:30 a.m., it was unusually crowded for a preliminary hearing. Word had spread about the out-of-town lawyer challenging Sheriff Donovan, drawing curious townspeople and several women who, Marcus noted, watched the proceedings with personal intensity, likely previous victims or their families. Judge Harrison entered, his usual confident swagger replaced by careful movements and darting eyes that repeatedly found Vanessa in her strategically placed seat. Sheriff Donovan sat directly behind Prosecutor Phillips, his uniform pressed and medals displayed, a visual reminder of his authority. Docket number 2025 CR 187, State versus Ellie Madison, the clerk announced. Ellie was led in, wearing the orange jumpsuit that deliberately stripped defendants of dignity. Marcus squeezed her arm reassuringly as she sat beside him. "Your Honour," Marcus began, rising smoothly, "before we proceed, I'd like to note for the record that my client has been held for 8 days without a bail hearing, in violation of State Statute 15382. Harrison blinked in surprise. "The defendant is charged with possession with intent to distribute, Counsellor. Bail is not customary. The statute makes no such distinction, Your Honour. Additionally, Ms. Madison is a single mother with no prior criminal record and deep community ties. She poses no flight risk." Prosecutor Phillips stood quickly. "Your Honour, the quantity of narcotics found indicates significant criminal enterprise. The state opposes any bail consideration." Marcus had anticipated this. "Then I move to challenge the evidence itself, Your Honour. We have reason to believe the alleged narcotics were planted in my client's residence by law enforcement." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Donovan's face darkened. "That's a serious accusation," Harrison said, glancing nervously at Vanessa. "Do you have evidence to support it?" "We do," Marcus replied confidently. "But first, I'd like to address the basis for the search warrant. The application states an anonymous tip was received claiming Ms. Madison was selling drugs from her apartment. I've submitted a motion to examine the original recording of this call." Phillips objected immediately. "That information is confidential to protect the tipster. The tipster doesn't need protection because they don't exist," Marcus countered. "The same phone number has been used to call in anonymous tips in 3 other cases, all resulting in Donovan's deputies finding drugs, all involving single women who had previous interactions with the sheriff. This caused a louder stir in the Hamdi courtroom. Harrison banged his gavel, Mr. Reed approaching the bench with evidence of these claims. Marcus produced the documents Reynolds had provided, along with affidavits from 2 previous defendants who had taken plea deals. As Harrison reviewed the materials, looking increasingly uncomfortable, Marcus glanced at Donovan. The sheriff's composed facade was cracking, his jaw clenched tight enough to strain the muscles in his neck. "Your Honour," Phillips interjected, "even if the tip came from a questionable source, the evidence speaks for itself. Deputies found packaged narcotics in the defendant's bedroom. This was the opening Marcus had been waiting for. About that evidence, Your Honour, he said, producing a USB drive. I have security footage showing Deputy Taylor entering Ms. Madison's apartment the day before the search warrant was executed. He was carrying a toolbox and a plastic bag, posing as maintenance personnel. A juvenile witness observed him searching areas unrelated to any maintenance issue. Harrison looked genuinely alarmed now. Is this footage authenticated? It comes directly from the apartment complex's security system, Marcus lied smoothly. In reality, Jackson had created the footage using deepfake technology, inserting Taylor's face onto existing security video, undetectable without forensic analysis. Additionally, Marcus continued, pressing his advantage, I have documentation showing Deputy Taylor was logged as responding to an incident at the high school during this same time period. He falsified his activity log to create an alibi. Phillips conferred hurriedly with Donovan, who was now visibly agitated. Your Honour, Phillips said finally, the state requests time to review these allegations before proceeding. Marcus had expected this delaying tactic. My client has already spent over a week in jail based on fabricated evidence. I move for immediate dismissal of all charges and her release. Harrison looked torn, his eyes darting between Donovan, Vanessa, and the documents before him. I'm not prepared to dismiss charges at this time, he said carefully. However, given the questions raised about the evidence, I am setting bail at $5,000. It wasn't the victory Marcus had hoped for, but it was progress. Ellie gasped softly beside him, a sum she could potentially afford with help. Furthermore, Harrison continued, surprising everyone, I'm ordering an independent verification of the evidence in question. The narcotics will be reweighed and tested by the state crime lab, not the county facility. Donovan stood abruptly. Your Honour, my department follows strict evidence protocols. This is unnecessary and insulting to my deputies. Harrison, emboldened by Vanessa's presence and clearly worried about his own exposure, stood his ground. Nevertheless, Sheriff, that is my ruling. This court will reconvene in 2 weeks after independent analysis is complete. As the proceedings concluded, Marcus helped Ellie through the bail process, using funds he had arranged through his network. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd of supporters had gathered, including Mrs. Jenkins and Sophie, who rushed forward to embrace her mother when she finally emerged. The reunion was emotional and brief. Marcus ushered them quickly to a waiting car, aware that Donovan was watching from the courthouse steps, his expression murderous. What happens now? Ellie asked once they were safely in Mrs. Jenkins's home, Sophie clinging to her side. Donovan will try to cover his tracks, Marcus explained. He'll pressure the judge, maybe threaten the witnesses, but he's rattled, and that's when people make mistakes. But the charges weren't dismissed, Ellie pointed out. I could still go to prison. That won't happen, Marcus assured her. Today was just the opening move. Now that you're out, we can build a stronger case. Mrs. Jenkins, practical as ever, brought them tea. The real question is how far Donovan will go to protect himself. A cornered animal is most dangerous. Marcus nodded grimly. Which is why we need to be careful. All of us. He looked meaningfully at Sophie, who was showing her mother her latest drawings. Donovan knows his case is weakening. He might try to apply pressure in other ways. You think he'd threaten a child? Ellie asked, horrified. Not directly, Marcus said, but he might use Sophie to get to you, suggest that child services should be involved, or that your parental fitness is in question. Ellie's face hardened. Let him try. As evening approached, Marcus coordinated with Vanessa and Jackson in his hotel room. Harrison is definitely spooked, Vanessa reported. He tried to call Donovan 3 times after court, but I made sure to be nearby, making it clear the audit was still ongoing. And Phillips is researching federal audits of judicial procedures, Jackson added. He's trying to verify our credentials without alerting anyone. Marcus nodded. Good. Keep them off balance. Meanwhile, we need to accelerate our timeline. Donovan won't sit idle now that we've shown our hand. What's our next move? Vanessa asked. Marcus pulled out a detailed timeline he'd created. We need concrete evidence of the conspiracy between Donovan, Harrison, and Phillips. Reynolds is helping with the evidence tampering angle, but we need financial proof of Harrison's payoffs. I can access his bank records, Jackson offered, but we'd need to connect specific deposits to Donovan, and we need insurance, Marcus added. Something to keep Donovan from retaliating while we build the case. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. What kind of insurance? The kind that ensures mutual destruction if he pushes too hard. Marcus opened his laptop, showing surveillance photos of Donovan visiting his mistress. I've been watching him. This is leverage if we need it. Blackmail. Vanessa looked concerned. That's not our usual approach. Like I said, this isn't our usual job. Marcus closed the laptop. But I won't use it unless absolutely necessary. For now, we keep building our case piece by piece. As his associates left to continue their assignments, Marcus stood at the window, watching the streetlights. Come on across Millfield. The preliminary hearing had gone as well as could be expected. Ellie was home with Sophie, and doubt had been cast on the prosecution's case, but this was just the beginning. Donovan had lost this round, but he still had power, resources, and a lifetime of corruption to protect. The real battle was just beginning, and Marcus knew that before it ended, he would have to reveal exactly who he was and why he had really come to Millfield. The question was whether Ellie and Sophie would still trust him when they learned the truth. The pounding on Marcus's hotel door came at 2:17 a.m., 3 sharp raps that jolted him from sleep. He moved silently to the door, gun in hand, a precaution he rarely needed in his usual cons, but had deemed necessary in Millfield. Mr. Reed, a dull, gruff voice called. Sheriff's Department, open up. Marcus checked the peephole. 2 deputies stood in the hallway, hands resting on their holstered weapons. Not Donovan himself, but clearly his message carriers. He tucked the gun into the back of his waistband, covered by his t-shirt, and opened the door. Gentlemen, he said calmly. It's rather late for a social call. The deputies, Taylor and another officer Marcus recognized as Donovan's close ally, pushed past him into the room. Consider this a courtesy visit, Taylor said, making a show of looking around the room. Sheriff Donovan is concerned about your safety. Is he now? Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed. How thoughtful. Millfield can be dangerous for outsiders who don't understand local customs, the second deputy added. Accidents happen. Car brakes fail. Hotel rooms catch fire. The threat couldn't have been clearer. Marcus maintained his composure, though. His mind was racing, assessing options if the situation escalated. I appreciate the warning, he replied, though I find it interesting that such concerns arise immediately after today's hearing. Taylor stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. The sheriff suggests you might be happier taking cases. In Boston, Ms. Madison can manage with her public defender. I'll take that under advisement. Anything else? The second deputy picked up Marcus's case files from the desk, flipping through them casually. Gathering quite a bit of information about our town. Seems excessive for a simple drug case. I'm thorough, Marcus said, resisting the urge to snatch the files back. Now, unless you have a warrant, I'd like to get back to sleep. Taylor dropped all pretense. Listen carefully, Reed. You're poking into things that don't concern you. The sheriff has friends in places you can't imagine. Judges, state officials, even federal contacts. This little crusade of yours will end badly. Is that a threat, Deputy Taylor? It's reality. Taylor moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. You seem like a smart man. Make the smart choice. Leave Millfield by tomorrow night. After they left, Marcus immediately called Vanessa. They just paid me a visit. We need to accelerate everything. How bad? She asked, fully alert despite the hour. Bad enough. Donovan's moving faster than I expected. Check on Ellie and Sophie at first light. And tell Jackson to prepare our contingency plan. Sleep was impossible now. Marcus reviewed his security measures, then spent the remaining hours of darkness organising evidence and planning his next moves. By dawn he had a revised strategy, more aggressive and with significantly higher stakes. His phone rang just after sunrise. It was Mrs. Jenkins, her voice tense. There's been a patrol. Car parked across the street all night, she reported. And someone tried the back door around midnight. The alarm system you installed scared them off. Is everyone all right? For now. But Sophie's frightened, and Ellie's talking about taking the plea deal again. Marcus felt a surge of anger. Put her on. Ellie came to the phone moments later. They're watching the house, Marcus. Sophie can't even go to school. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Listen to me, Marcus said firmly. This means we're winning. Donovan is desperate, or powerful enough to make our lives hell, she countered. He sent Child Protective Services yesterday afternoon. They're evaluating my fitness as a parent, given the drug charges. This was a low blow, even for Donovan. He's trying to pressure you into pleading guilty. Don't give him what he wants. Easy for you to say. You don't have a child to protect. Her voice broke slightly. Maybe if I just serve the time and leave Sophie without her mother for years. Marcus interrupted. That's exactly what Donovan wants. Trust me, Ellie. I'm going to end this, but I need you to hold strong for a few more days. After a long pause, Ellie agreed reluctantly. Marcus arranged for additional security, private contractors posing as home repair workers who would keep watch on the house. Later that morning, Marcus met with Deputy Reynolds in the same secluded corner of the park. "Donovan's on the warpath," Reynolds reported, looking exhausted. "He's got deputies searching for dirt on you, pressuring the judge. Even called in favours with state police to try identifying your federal friend." "Has he succeeded?" Reynolds shook his head. "Not yet, but he's pulled Taylor and 4 others off regular duty, dedicated solely to undermining your case and intimidating witnesses." "What about the evidence reweighing that Harrison ordered?" "Scheduled for tomorrow. Phillips tried to delay it, but your federal audit friend made enough noise that he backed down." Marcus handed Reynolds a sealed envelope. "I need you to ensure this gets to the state lab technician, who will be handling the evidence. It contains documentation of the original weight recorded at the scene." "That's risky," Reynolds warned. "If it's traced back to me, it won't be. But without this, they'll find a way to make the weights match." As Reynolds left, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Judge Harrison made 3 cash withdrawals, $5,000 each, last month. Same day as 3 case dismissals for Donovan's friends." The pieces were coming together. Marcus now had evidence of Harrison taking bribes, Taylor planting evidence, and the anonymous tips coming from the same source. But he needed more, something concrete and undeniable that would bring down Donovan himself, not just his accomplices. His next stop was Ellie's diner, now being managed by her assistant manager. The lunch crowd was thin, the usual customers, perhaps wary of association with the controversial case. Diane, the server who had approached him earlier about her sister, slid into the booth across from him. "I've been talking to others," she said quietly. "Women who were arrested like Ellie and my sister. 7 of them are willing to make statements about Donovan approaching them romantically before their arrests." "That's significant," Marcus said. "A clear pattern of behaviour." "There's more," Diane continued. "One of them, Melissa Winters, says she has text messages from Donovan, threatening her after she declined his advances, then offering to help with her case if she reconsidered. This was exactly the kind of evidence Marcus needed. Direct communication, showing Donovan's abuse of power. "I need to speak with her immediately. That's the problem," Diane said, lowering her voice further. "She left town this morning, said 2 deputies visited her last night, suggested her probation might be revoked if she spoke to you. She was too scared to stay." Another witness intimidated into silence. Donovan was systematically removing Marcus's leverage, 1 piece at a time. As Marcus left the diner, his phone rang again. Mrs. Jenkins, her voice trembling. "Sophie's gone," she said. "Ellie went to meet with her public defender about the CPS issue. I was watching Sophie, but she went to get the mail and..." The elderly woman's voice broke. "A patrol car drove up. I couldn't see who was inside, but when I looked again, Sophie was gone." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Have you called Ellie?" "She's not answering. I called the sheriff's office, but they said no deputies were assigned to." "This street today. I'm on my way," Marcus said, already running to his car. "Lock the doors and don't open them for anyone but me or Ellie." As he sped toward Mrs. Jenkins's house, Marcus made rapid calculations. This wasn't a formal arrest. No legitimate officer would take a child without documentation or notification. This was Donovan, escalating beyond threats to actual abduction. The stakes had just changed dramatically. What had begun as a quest for justice was now a race against time to find a missing child. A child who had become collateral damage in a corrupt sheriff's desperate attempt to maintain power. And Marcus, for all his careful planning, had not anticipated this. For the first time since returning to Millfield, he felt the cold grip of fear, not for himself, but for an innocent 8-year-old girl who had trusted him to bring her mother home safely. Vanessa Cole's rental car screeched to a halt outside Mrs. Jenkins' house less than 20 minutes after Marcus's frantic call. She found him in the living room with Ellie, who had returned to find her daughter missing and was now oscillating between panic and rage. "You promised she'd be safe," Ellie said accusingly as Vanessa entered. "You said Donovan wouldn't touch her." Marcus looked more shaken than Vanessa had seen him in years. "We'll find her," he insisted. "Donovan won't hurt a child. This is just leverage." "Who's this?" Ellie demanded, noticing Vanessa. "Vanessa Cole," Marcus said. "My colleague." Vanessa assessed the situation quickly. "Have you called the police?" "Donovan is the police," Mrs. Jenkins reminded her bitterly. "Not all of them." Marcus pulled out his phone. "Reynolds might know something." While Marcus made the call, Vanessa drew Ellie aside. "We need to think strategically. Where would Donovan take her?" "Not the station. Too public." "I don't know," Ellie said, her voice breaking. I should have taken the plea. This is my fault. This is Donovan's fault. Vanessa corrected firmly. And we're going to make him regret it. Marcus ended his call, his expression grim. Reynolds knows nothing about any operation involving Sophie. He's checking discreetly, but it looks like this was Donovan acting independently, off the books. That actually gives us an advantage, Vanessa pointed out. If it's unofficial, he can't hold her long without questions being asked. This is about applying immediate pressure. Mrs. Jenkins emerged from the kitchen with a tray of untouched tea. Sophie had her backpack with her, the one with the little tracking device. Everyone turned to stare at the elderly woman. What tracking device? Marcus asked. The little purple fob on her backpack, Mrs. Jenkins explained. My grandson gave it to me after I fell last year. It's one of those finder gadgets for keys and such. I put it on Sophie's backpack after those deputies started watching the house. Vanessa was already pulling out her laptop. What's the brand? We need the app. Within minutes, they had the tracking application running, showing a blinking dot at the edge of town. That's Donovan's lake house, Ellie identified immediately. About 20 minutes outside Millfield. Marcus was already moving toward the door. Ellie, stay here with Mrs. Jenkins. Vanessa and I will handle this. She's my daughter, Ellie protested. Which is why you need to stay, Vanessa interjected smoothly. If this is a trap to pressure you into a plea deal, you walking in is exactly, what Donovan wants. Reluctantly, Ellie agreed. As they hurried to Vanessa's rental car, Marcus briefed her on the situation. Donovan's lake house is isolated. County property records show it's in his sister's name, probably to hide the asset. Reynolds says he often conducts unofficial business there. This is a major escalation, Vanessa noted as she drove. A child crosses lines that even corrupt cops usually avoid. He's desperate. We've threatened his entire operation. Vanessa glanced at Marcus, noting the tension in his jaw. You care about them, the waitress and her daughter. They're innocent victims. We've encountered plenty of innocent victims in our work, Marcus. We usually help them as part of the con, then move on. This feels different. Marcus didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was uncharacteristically soft. Sophie reminds me of myself at that age, before everything fell apart. They drove in silence for several minutes before Vanessa spoke again. I'm still not clear on your endgame here. What's the actual con? Donovan's destruction. Complete and public. That's not a con. That's a vendetta. Vanessa took a sharp turn onto a gravel road. And vendettas don't pay. Some debts aren't about money. The tracking app showed they were approaching the location. Vanessa killed the headlights and pulled over a quarter mile from the property. We need a plan, she said. We can't just walk up to the door. Marcus surveyed the area. The lake house was set back from the road, surrounded by trees, with a detached garage and small dock visible in the moonlight. A single vehicle, not a patrol car, but a black SUV Marcus recognized as Donovan's personal transportation, was parked outside. I'll approach from the lakeside, Marcus decided. You create a diversion at the front. What kind of diversion? Marcus thought quickly. Use your federal credentials. Claim to be following up on an anonymous tip about evidence tampering. Keep high. Him talking at the front door while I find Sophie. Vanessa checked her fake DOJ badge. And if he's not alone, Reynolds said Taylor's on patrol tonight. The others are home or at the station. It should just be Donovan. They synchronized watches and separated. Vanessa circled around to approach the front entrance, while Marcus made his way through the woods toward the lakeside of the property. As he neared the house, Marcus could see through a back window into a rustic living room. Sophie sat on a couch, apparently unharmed, watching television while Donovan paced nearby, phone to his ear. Marcus texted Vanessa. Visual on Sophie. She's okay. Donovan on phone. Ready when you are. 3 minutes later, Marcus heard the sound of car tires on gravel, followed by an authoritative knock. Vanessa's voice carried clearly. Sheriff Donovan, Auditor Cole, Department of Justice. We need to speak regarding some irregularities. Through the window, Marcus watched Donovan freeze, then quickly direct Sophie into another room before moving to answer the front door. The moment Donovan disappeared from view, Marcus tested the back door. Locked. He quickly picked it. A skill he'd perfected years ago and slipped inside. Following the direction Donovan had taken Sophie, he found a small study. The door was locked from the outside. Sophie? He whispered, tapping gently. Mr. Reed? Came the frightened reply. It's me. Stand back from the door. He had the lock open in seconds. Sophie rushed into his arms, clinging tightly. I was getting the mail and the sheriff said Mum needed me, she explained in a rush. But then he brought me here instead. It's okay. Marcus assured her. We're leaving now. Very quietly. From the front of the house, he could hear Vanessa's professional tone maintaining Donovan's attention with questions about evidence procedures. They moved silently toward the back door, but as they reached it, a floorboard creaked beneath Marcus's foot. Who's there? Donovan called out sharply. Marcus pushed Sophie through the door. Run to the trees. Vanessa will find you. As Sophie disappeared into the darkness, Marcus turned to face Donovan, who emerged from the hallway with his gun drawn. Breaking and entering, counselor, Donovan said coldly. That's a serious charge. Kidnapping a child is worse, Marcus replied, hands raised but posture defiant. Vanessa appeared behind Donovan. Sheriff, why don't you lower your weapon? This situation is complicated enough already. Donovan didn't turn or lower his gun. This isn't a DOJ matter, Auditor Cole, if that's even your real name. This is local police business. Taking a child to your private residence is police business, Marcus challenged. I doubt your department policy covers that. Donovan's expression darkened. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Reed. This town is mine. The county prosecutor, the judge, half the deputies, all loyal to me. One phone call and you both disappear, permanently. That would be unwise, Vanessa said smoothly, producing her phone. We're currently streaming this conversation to several secure locations. Your threats have been recorded. It was a bluff, but delivered with such confidence that Donovan hesitated. The fee... Girl is safe, Marcus added. Already far from here. Whatever leverage you thought you had is gone. Your only play now is to claim this was all a misunderstanding. Donovan lowered his weapon slightly, calculating. Get out of my house. Both of you. This isn't over. No, Marcus agreed, moving carefully toward the door where Vanessa stood. It's just beginning. Once outside, they rushed to find Sophie hiding. Exactly where instructed. The drive back to Millfield was tense, with Sophie nestled between them in the front seat, clutching her backpack. You were very brave, Vanessa told the child. Your mum will be proud. Sophie looked up at her with solemn eyes. Are you Mr. Reed's girlfriend? The question startled a laugh from Vanessa. No, sweetheart. We're old friends. She's helping me help your mum, Marcus explained. Sophie considered this. She's pretty, and she talks fancy like you do. As they pulled up to Mrs. Jenkins's house, Sophie was already scrambling out toward her mother, who ran from the porch to sweep her into a fierce embrace. Watching the reunion, Vanessa spoke quietly to Marcus. Donovan won't stop. He'll retaliate. Harder next time. I'm counting on it, Marcus replied. But now we have him on kidnapping. Reynolds will help document Sophie's statement. You still haven't told me the full plan. Marcus watched as Ellie carried Sophie inside, the child's arms wrapped tightly around her mother's neck. Tomorrow, he promised. I'll explain everything tomorrow. But in truth, the plan was evolving with each development. What had begun as a carefully orchestrated con to expose corruption had become something far more personal and dangerous than even Marcus had anticipated. The meeting in Marcus's hotel room the next morning had the tense atmosphere of a war council. Vanessa and Jackson sat reviewing documents while Marcus paced, his usual composure fraying at the edges after a nearly sleepless night. Donovan's gone quiet, Jackson reported. No movement on his accounts, no unusual police activity. It's like he's waiting for something, or planning something, Vanessa added. I don't like it. He's too smart to just accept what happened last night. Marcus stopped pacing. The evidence reweighing is scheduled for 2 p.m. today. That's our strongest play. If the weights don't match the original record, the case against Ellie collapses and we have proof of evidence tampering, assuming Reynolds got our documentation to the lab tech, Jackson pointed out. And assuming the tech hasn't been pressured to cooperate with Donovan. I've taken precautions, Marcus assured them. The state lab technician is from outside the county. I've arranged for a reporter from the Capital City Times to be present during the testing. Unofficial, but enough to make tampering difficult. Vanessa looked skeptical. That feels thin. We need... A sharp knock interrupted her. Marcus checked the peephole, then quickly opened the door to admit Deputy Reynolds, who looked harried and out of place in his uniform. We have a problem, Reynolds said without preamble. The evidence is gone. The room fell silent. Gone, Marcus repeated. What do you mean, gone? I mean, it's not in the evidence lockup where it's supposed to be. The chain of custody log shows Taylor checked it out last night for additional testing. It was never returned. Marcus exchanged alarmed looks with Vanessa. Without the physical evidence, the reweighing can't happen, Reynolds finished. And without that, your evidence tampering angle falls apart. Can you report it missing? Force an investigation? Vanessa asked. Reynolds laughed bitterly. Report it to whom? Donovan controls the investigation. He'll claim it was sent to another lab or misplaced during inventory. By the time anyone outside the department gets involved, the evidence will reappear, perfectly matching the weights. In the official record. Marcus rubbed his temples, thinking rapidly. What about the security footage from the evidence room? If we can show Taylor removing evidence improperly— Already checked, Reynolds interrupted. Camera was malfunctioning during that time period. Happens regularly when Donovan needs it to. This was a major setback. Without the physical evidence discrepancy, they lost their clearest path to proving tampering. Marcus had based significant portions of his strategy on this cornerstone. We need to pivot, he decided. If we can't attack the evidence directly, we focus on the witnesses. Sophie's testimony about seeing Taylor in the apartment, combined with the security footage— His phone rang, interrupting his thought. The caller ID showed Mrs. Jenkins. Marcus. The elderly woman's voice was tight with worry. Sophie's running a fever. 103 and climbing. Ellie's taking her to the emergency room. Another complication. Which hospital? County General. It's the— Only one within 30 miles. We'll meet them there, Marcus said, ending the call and quickly explaining the situation to the others. This is too coincidental, Vanessa observed as they hurried to their vehicles. Sophie was fine last night after the lake house. Children get sick, Jackson pointed out. Not like this, Marcus said grimly. Not immediately after being alone. With Donovan for hours. At the hospital, they found Ellie in a treatment room with Sophie, who lay listless on an examination table, her normally rosy cheeks flushed with fever. A doctor was reviewing her symptoms. Sudden onset, high fever, fatigue, no respiratory symptoms, the physician noted. We'll run some tests, but it appears to be a viral infection. Has she been exposed to anyone ill recently? Ellie shook her head, her worried gaze meeting Marcus's over the doctor's shoulder. The unspoken question was clear. Could Donovan have done this? As the doctor left to order tests, Marcus approached the bed. Sophie managed a weak smile. Hey, kiddo, he said gently. Not feeling so great, huh? My head hurts, she whispered. And I'm really hot. The doctors will figure it out, he assured her, then turned to Ellie. Can we talk outside for a moment? In the hallway. Marcus voiced what they were both thinking. The timing is suspicious. Did she eat or drink anything at Donovan's house? She said he gave her hot chocolate. Ellie replied, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. You think he would poison a child? Not poison, Marcus clarified. But there are substances that can induce temporary fever or flu-like symptoms. It would be a calculated move. Sophie gets too sick to testify. You become too focused on her health to pursue the case and no permanent harm done. Ellie's expression hardened. That's monstrous. It's effective, Marcus admitted, and nearly impossible to prove. Mr. Reed? A nurse approached them. There are officers here asking about the patient. They say it's related to a pending investigation. Marcus and Ellie exchanged alarmed glances. What officers? Deputies Taylor and Morris. They're at the front desk. This confirmed Marcus's suspicions. Donovan was moving quickly to capitalize on the situation. Tell them the patient is under doctor's care and cannot be disturbed, Marcus instructed. If they persist, ask to see their warrant. They won't have one. As the nurse left, Vanessa approached from the waiting area. Jackson's watching the main entrance. Reynolds is coming, off duty in civilian clothes. We need to get Sophie's blood tested independently, Marcus decided. If something was administered, we need to identify it. I know someone at the university. Research hospital, Vanessa offered. Owes me a favour if we can get a sample. Absolutely not, Ellie interrupted. You're talking about my daughter like she's evidence. She needs medical care, not more conspiracy theories. Marcus understood her reaction. Ellie, I know this is overwhelming. But if Donovan did cause this, proving it could be crucial to protecting both of you. Before she could respond, Sophie's doctor returned, looking concerned. Mrs. Madison, your daughter's white blood cell count is elevated in an unusual pattern. We'd like to run additional tests. Has she been exposed to any unusual substances or medications? This medical confirmation made Ellie falter. I don't know. She was briefly in the custody of someone who might have given her something. The doctor's expression grew serious. Are you suggesting intentional harm? We can't be certain, Marcus interjected smoothly. But given the circumstances, we'd like blood samples preserved for potential toxicology. Screening. While the doctor processed this concerning request, Deputy Reynolds arrived, immediately pulling Marcus aside. Taylor and Morris are here on Donovan's direct orders, he confirmed in a hushed tone. They're claiming potential child endangerment, suggesting Ellie might have exposed Sophie to narcotics. That's absurd, Marcus hissed. It's pretext, Reynolds agreed. But effective. They're coordinating with CPS again, using Sophie's illness to question Ellie's fitness as a parent. This was escalating beyond what Marcus had anticipated. Donovan was using every system at his disposal, not just the police but child services, and potentially even medical care, to pressure Ellie and neutralize their key witness. We need to accelerate everything, Marcus decided. The original plan isn't viable anymore. What's the alternative? Reynolds asked. Marcus made a rapid series of calculations. We need to force Donovan into the open. No more proxy battles through evidence and procedures. Direct confrontation. That's risky, Reynolds warned. He still has considerable power. Yes, Marcus agreed, but he's also desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. As they spoke, Vanessa approached with troubling news. Ellie's being questioned by a CPS worker. They're suggesting the court might need to appoint a temporary guardian for Sophie during her illness, given Ellie's pending criminal matters. This was the final straw. Marcus had tried to play within the system, using legal maneuvers and careful evidence gathering. But Donovan was demonstrating that he controlled too many aspects of that system. Get Jackson, Marcus instructed Vanessa. Tell him we're moving. To Plan B, the nuclear option? She asked, eyebrows raised. Are you sure? Marcus looked through the doorway at Sophie, small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, and Ellie, fighting tears as she answered a government official's accusatory questions. I'm sure, he said firmly. Donovan wants to fight dirty? He has no idea how dirty I can get. As Vanessa left to contact Jackson, Marcus felt a familiar cold resolve settling over him. The focused determination that had helped him execute his most audacious cons. But this time, it wasn't about money or revenge. It was about protecting a child and her mother from a system corrupted by one man's power and ego. And for that, Marcus was willing to risk everything, including exposing his own true identity and purpose in Millfield. Sophie's condition improved dramatically by evening, her fever breaking as suddenly as it had appeared, confirming Marcus's suspicions about its artificial nature. The hospital insisted on keeping her overnight for observation, with Ellie refusing to leave her daughter's side despite the CPS workers' continued presence. Marcus stood in the hospital corridor with Vanessa, both speaking in hushed tones. Jackson's confirmed that Judge Harrison received a cash deposit this morning, Vanessa reported. 10,000, double his usual payoff. And Taylor has suddenly acquired a week's vacation time, Donovan's cleaning house, Marcus observed, making sure his accomplices stay loyal. Or silent. Vanessa checked her watch. The Capital City Times reporter is still waiting for the evidence that never arrived. I've stalled her, but she won't wait forever. Marcus made a decision. Tell her to meet us at the hospital cafeteria in 20 minutes. It's time she heard the full story. Including your real identity? Vanessa asked, eyebrows raised. That's a significant risk. Calculated risk, Marcus corrected. Donovan's moved beyond legal channels. We need to do the same. As Vanessa left to contact the reporter, Marcus returned to Sophie's room. The CPS worker had finally departed, and Ellie sat alone beside her sleeping daughter, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She's better, Ellie said without looking up. Doctor called it unusual but not unprecedented. Said these viral things sometimes break as quickly as they come on. Marcus sat in the chair opposite her. Ellie, we need to talk. About Donovan. About the case and about me. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. What about you? I haven't been entirely honest about who I am or why I'm here. A range of emotions crossed her face. Confusion, suspicion, and finally a tired resignation. I knew there was something. No lawyer works for free, especially not one as good as you seem to be. I'm not actually a lawyer, Marcus admitted quietly. Ellie stiffened. What? My name is Marcus Reed. That part is true, but I'm not an attorney. I'm a professional con artist. The confession hung in the air between them. Ellie glanced at Sophie, ensuring she was still asleep before responding in a fierce whisper. A con artist? You've been pretending to be my lawyer while I'm facing prison. Do you have any idea what you've done? I know exactly what I've done, Marcus replied calmly. I've built a case against Donovan that a real lawyer couldn't, because I'm not bound by bar ethics or legal procedures. Why would you do this? What's your angle? Ellie demanded. Marcus took a deep breath. 15 years ago, Sheriff Donovan, then Deputy Donovan, Arrested my mother on fabricated drug charges. Identical setup to yours. She died in prison 3 years into her sentence. I was 13, sent into foster care. Ellie's anger faltered, replaced by dawning comprehension. This is revenge. Justice. Marcus corrected. Donovan has been running this same scheme for years. You're just his latest victim. So all of this, helping me, protecting Sophie, it was just about getting back at Donovan. It started that way, Marcus admitted. But not anymore. Ellie studied him intently. And your colleagues. The federal auditor. Vanessa is my former partner. Jackson provides technical support. The federal credentials are fake but effective. My God. Ellie ran a hand through her hair. So everything has been a lie. Not everything, Marcus insisted. The evidence against Donovan is real. The corruption is real. And my commitment to helping you and Sophie is real. Ellie stood abruptly, pacing the small hospital room. Do you understand what you've done? If you're not a real lawyer, anything you've filed isn't valid. The preliminary hearing, the bail arrangement, it could all be thrown out. Only if they discover the truth before we finish this, Marcus pointed out. And I don't intend for that to happen. Finish what exactly? What's your plan? To expose everything. Donovan's corruption, the framing of innocent people, the bribes to the judge, all of it. But to do that, I need your trust. Ellie laughed bitterly. Trust? You just admitted you've been lying to me since we met. I've been honest about the important things, Marcus insisted. About believing in your innocence. About helping Sophie. About fighting Donovan's corruption. Before Ellie could respond, Sophie stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Mum? Is Mr. Reed still here? Ellie's expression softened immediately as she turned to her daughter. Yes, honey. He's here. Sophie smiled weakly. Good. I dreamed you were arguing. The simple statement hung in the air, laden with unintended weight. Ellie and Marcus exchanged looks over the child's head. We were just discussing the case, Marcus said gently. How are you feeling? Better. Not so hot anymore. Sophie's gaze was clearer, her colour returning to normal. Did the sheriff make me sick? The directness of the question startled both adults. Why would you ask that, sweetie? Ellie asked carefully. Because he put something in my hot chocolate that tasted funny, and then I got sick. Marcus and Ellie exchanged alarmed glances. Sophie, this is very important, Marcus said. Did you see him put something in your drink? The child nodded. A little packet of powder. He said it was special marshmallows, but it didn't look like marshmallows. This was potentially crucial testimony, direct evidence of Donovan tampering with Sophie's food or drink before her sudden illness. But using it would mean putting Sophie on the stand, exposing her to Donovan's intimidation again. I've made some decisions, Ellie said quietly, as Sophie dozed off again. First, I want a real lawyer, immediately. Second, if you're serious about helping us, you need to tell me everything. No more secrets. Marcus nodded. Fair enough. There's a reporter waiting downstairs. I was planning to give her the full story, including my real identity. That's suicide, Ellie observed. You'd be admitting to criminal impersonation, fraud. It's also our best protection, Marcus countered. Once the story is public, Donovan can't make it disappear. The state authorities would have to intervene. Ellie considered this. What about Sophie? And me? If your case falls apart because you're not really a lawyer, that's why we need to act quickly. Get everything into the open at once. Donovan's corruption, the pattern of framed defendants, the judicial bribes, all of it. Create enough public outcry that the system has to respond. A long moment passed as Ellie weighed her options. Finally she spoke. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'll trust you, one last time. Not because you deserve it, but because Sophie deserves justice, and because I don't see another way out of this nightmare. Relief washed over Marcus. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Ellie warned. If this backfires, if Sophie gets hurt or I end up in prison because of your deception, I will never forgive you. It won't come to that, Marcus promised. I've spent 15 years becoming very good at what I do. Donovan doesn't stand a chance. As they prepared to meet the reporter, Marcus realised that for the first time in his career, he was planning to expose himself as a con artist, deliberately undermining his own carefully constructed persona. It was a massive professional risk, but also strangely liberating, because somewhere along the way, between seeking revenge for his mother and protecting Sophie, Marcus had discovered something unexpected. The truth, wielded properly, could be the most powerful con of all. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty at this late hour, just a few nurses grabbing coffee between shifts. In a corner booth, Marcus and Ellie sat across from Christine Weber, a sharp-eyed reporter from the Capital City Times who had been following corruption stories across the state for over a decade. "Let me be clear," Christine said after listening to their account, her recorder running between them. "You're alleging that Sheriff Donovan systematically framed innocent women on drug charges, bribed Judge Harrison to ensure convictions, and most recently abducted an 8-year-old girl to pressure her mother into accepting a plea deal." "Yes," Marcus confirmed, "and I have documentation to support every allegation, including financial records showing regular cash payments to Judge Harrison, coinciding with favourable rulings in Donovan's cases," Vanessa added, sliding a file across the table. Christine examined the documents with practiced efficiency. "And you're prepared to go on record with your own identity, admitting that you impersonated an attorney as part of an elaborate sting operation?" "I am," Marcus said without hesitation. "My deception was wrong, but necessary to expose a greater injustice." The reporter studied him thoughtfully. "You realize this could result in criminal charges against you?" "I'm aware of the risk." Christine turned to Ellie. "And you, Ms. Madison? You're willing to publicly state that you were framed, that your daughter was abducted by the sheriff, and that you were working with a con artist posing as your attorney?" Ellie's hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "If it means protecting Sophie and stopping Donovan from doing this to anyone else, yes. This is the biggest corruption story I've seen in 20 years of reporting," Christine admitted. "But before I commit, I need to see your smoking gun, the irrefutable evidence that proves Donovan's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt." Marcus exchanged glances with Vanessa. "We have multiple pieces of evidence: the financial records, Sophie's testimony about Taylor planting evidence, documentation of the anonymous tip pattern. All circumstantial," Christine pointed out. "Donovan could claim the financial transactions were legitimate, that Sophie is confused or coached, that the anonymous tips were coincidental. I need something definitive, something he can't explain." "Away." Marcus leaned forward. "Tomorrow morning we'll have it. The security footage from Ellie's apartment complex showing Deputy Taylor entering with a toolbox and plastic bag, then leaving with just the toolbox. Combined with Sophie's testimony, it establishes clear evidence planting." Christine nodded slowly. "If that footage is authenticated, it's compelling, but Donovan will claim it's altered or misleading, which is why we also have traffic camera footage showing Taylor's patrol car at the apartment complex when he was officially logged elsewhere," Vanessa added. "Better," Christine conceded, "but still not bulletproof." Marcus made a decision. "There's one more piece. Sophie has agreed to testify that she saw Donovan put something in her hot chocolate at the lake house shortly before she developed a high fever. If toxicology confirms foreign substances, that's attempted poisoning of a minor," Christine finished, her professional demeanour briefly cracking to reveal genuine shock. "That would be impossible to explain away. The blood tests should come back tomorrow," Ellie said quietly. "The doctor ordered comprehensive toxicology after I mentioned potential tampering." Christine closed her notebook. "I need 24 hours to verify what I can independently and prepare the story. If the footage and toxicology reports confirm your allegations, we'll run it front page, with additional coverage online." After the reporter left, Marcus, Vanessa and Ellie returned to Sophie's room, where Jackson was keeping watch. "Reynolds called," he reported in a low voice. "Donovan's scheduled an emergency meeting with Judge Harrison and Prosecutor Phillips for tomorrow morning. Something big is happening. He's consolidating his defences," Marcus surmised. "Making sure everyone sticks to the same story, or preparing to offer Ellie an unexpected deal," Vanessa suggested. "One that makes this all go away quietly." Ellie looked alarmed. "What kind of deal?" "Probably complete dismissal of charges in exchange for your silence, and immediate departure from Millfield," Marcus explained. "He's realising the case is more trouble than it's worth." "Would that work?" Ellie asked. "Could I just take Sophie and leave? Put this all behind us?" Marcus understood her temptation. "You could, but Donovan would continue targeting other vulnerable women, and the next Sophie might not be so lucky." The weight of responsibility settled visibly on Ellie's shoulders. "So we continue with the plan, with one modification," Marcus decided. "We need to secure the security footage immediately. It's our most tangible evidence, and Donovan will try to discredit or destroy it." Jackson nodded. "I'll handle it. The apartment manager gave me access to their system, technically gave it to Attorney Reed, but what he doesn't know won't hurt him. And I'll coordinate with Reynolds to ensure the toxicology samples aren't tampered with," Vanessa added. "If Donovan has influence at the hospital, he might try to interfere with the testing." As his associates departed on their assignments, Marcus remained with Ellie, both watching over Sophie's peaceful sleep. "You never really explained why," Ellie said softly. "Why you became a con artist after what happened to your mother. Most people would have gone the opposite direction, become a real lawyer or a police officer." Marcus considered the question. "The system failed my mother. Failed me. I learned early that justice doesn't come from following rules. It comes from knowing how to bend them in the right direction. And after this? After Donovan? I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I've never planned beyond this point." Ellie studied him thoughtfully. "You're good with Sophie. She trusts you. Kids have good instincts. Better than mine, apparently," Ellie said with a wry smile. "I still can't believe I didn't realize you weren't really a lawyer. That's the secret to a good con," Marcus explained. "People see what they expect to see. You needed a lawyer who believed in you, so that's what I became." "And now? What are you now?" The question caught Marcus off guard. Before he could formulate a response, his phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Footage secured. Uploading to encrypted server now." One piece of their plan was safely in place. Marcus checked the time, just past midnight. Less than 8 hours until Donovan's meeting with his co-conspirators. Less than 24 until Christine's story would break. "Get some rest," he told Ellie. "Tomorrow will be intense." "I don't think I can sleep," she admitted. "Try. I'll keep watch." As Ellie reclined in the chair beside Sophie's bed, Marcus positioned himself near the door, his mind racing through contingencies and potential complications. The plan was risky, deliberately exposing his true identity, relying on media pressure, betting that the evidence would be compelling enough to force official action against Donovan. If it failed, the consequences would be severe. Marcus himself would face criminal charges. Ellie might still be convicted on the drug charges. Sophie could end up in foster care, the same broken system that had failed him, but if it succeeded, Donovan's reign of corruption would end. Ellie and Sophie would be free, and perhaps Marcus would finally find the closure he'd been seeking since his mother's death. His phone buzzed again. Vanessa, this time. "Reynolds confirms toxicology priority status. Results by 9 a.m. Also Donovan making. Calls to state officials. Getting nervous. Good." A nervous Donovan was more likely to make mistakes, and mistakes were what they needed now. Public, undeniable errors that would expose the truth for all to see. As the night deepened, Marcus watched Sophie sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. On her bedside table lay a drawing she'd completed earlier, a courtroom scene similar to her previous one, but with a new addition. Beside the stick figures representing Marcus, Ellie, and the sheriff was a new character, a small figure with curly hair labelled "Me" in childish handwriting. Sophie had drawn herself testifying, bravely facing the sheriff who had frightened her. The simple image struck Marcus with unexpected force, a child's determination to speak truth against power, regardless of fear. In that moment, Marcus made a silent promise, not just to bring Donovan down, but to ensure that Sophie never had reason to doubt that justice was possible, that the truth could prevail, that good people could win against corruption. Whatever happened tomorrow, he would make sure Sophie's brave little stick figure had not stood up in vain. The Millfield County Courthouse buzzed with unusual energy that morning. Word had spread about the upcoming hearing in the Madison case, drawing a crowd that filled every bench in the courtroom. Local residents, shop owners, and even high school students on a government-class field trip packed the gallery. Marcus stood at the defense table, his demeanor confident despite the night's minimal sleep. Beside him, Ellie appeared remarkably composed, her hair neatly styled, wearing clothes Vanessa had brought from her apartment, a simple blue dress that projected respectability and innocence. Sophie had been released from the hospital that morning, the toxicology report confirming what they had suspected. Traces of ipecac and a mild sedative in her system, substances that would induce temporary illness without lasting harm. Mrs. Jenkins had taken the child home, with Jackson stationed nearby, for protection. At the prosecution table, Donovan sat beside Prosecutor Phillips, both men reviewing documents with feigned casualness. But Marcus noted the tension in Donovan's shoulders, the way his eyes continually scanned the room as if searching for threats. Judge Harrison entered, his usual ruddy complexion noticeably pale. The night before, Reynolds had informed them that the judge had attempted to withdraw from the case, citing a conflict of interest, only to be pressured by Donovan to remain. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Millfield County Court is now in session, the Honourable Judge Harrison presiding." As everyone settled, Marcus spotted Christine Weber in the back row, notebook ready, alongside two other reporters who had caught wind of a potential story. Vanessa sat directly behind the defense table, her fake federal credentials prominently displayed, maintaining the pressure on Harrison. "We're here for case number 2025, CR 187, State versus Ellie Madison," Judge Harrison announced, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "I understand both parties have matters to address before proceeding." Prosecutor Phillips rose first. "Your Honor, in light of new information, the state wishes to amend the charges against Ms. Madison. We are prepared to reduce the charge to simple possession, with a recommendation for probation rather than incarceration." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. This sudden reduction, from a charge carrying potentially 20 years to one typically resulting in probation, was a transparent attempt to salvage a failing case. Marcus stood. "Your Honor, the defense rejects any amended charges and moves for complete dismissal. Ms. Madison is innocent of all charges, as we are prepared to demonstrate conclusively today." Judge Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Reed, the prosecution is offering a very favourable resolution. Your client could walk out today with this matter behind her." "My client shouldn't have to accept any conviction for a crime she didn't commit," Marcus countered firmly, "and the court should be more concerned with why the prosecution is suddenly abandoning its previous position." Phillips interjected, "This is a routine exercise of prosecutorial discretion, Your Honor. Nothing improper." "Then the defense requests the opportunity to present evidence that will make clear exactly why the state is suddenly retreating," Marcus replied. "We have documentation and testimony proving that the evidence against Ms. Madison was planted by Deputy Taylor on Sheriff Donovan's instructions, as part of a systematic pattern of framing innocent citizens." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Harrison banged his gavel half-heartedly. "These are serious allegations, Counselor," he warned. "Yes, they are," Marcus agreed. "And we're prepared to support every one of them." He approached the bench with a file. "This contains financial records showing regular cash payments from Sheriff Donovan to Your Honor, coinciding with favourable rulings in cases Donovan had personal interest in." Harrison blanched visibly. Donovan stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is absurd. Defense counsel is making unfounded accusations without—" "We also have documentation," Marcus continued, raising his voice slightly, "showing that the anonymous tip leading to the search of Ms. Madison's apartment came from the same burner phone used in 3 previous cases, all involving single women who had rejected Sheriff Donovan's romantic advances." The courtroom was fully engaged now, the spectators leaning forward, reporters scribbling furiously. "Furthermore," Marcus pressed on, "we have a juvenile witness prepared to testify that she observed Deputy Taylor entering Ms. Madison's apartment the day before the search warrant was executed, photographing areas of the home, and carrying a plastic bag which we believe contained the drugs later discovered during the official search." Donovan conferred urgently with Phillips, who rose. "Again, Your Honor, these wild accusations are completely inappropriate. The defense is attempting to try this case in the court of public opinion rather than addressing the actual charges." Judge Harrison seemed paralyzed with indecision, his gaze darting between Marcus and Donovan. "Your Honor," Marcus said, moving to his laptop. "With the court's permission, I'd like to play a video that was secured from the apartment complex's security system." Without waiting for a response, Marcus connected his computer to the courtroom's evidence display system. The screen showed a clear image of the apartment building entrance, timestamp visible in the corner. After a moment, Deputy Taylor appeared, in civilian clothes, carrying a toolbox and a plastic grocery bag. The timestamp showed 2:17 p.m., the day before Ellie's arrest. "This is Deputy Taylor, supposedly conducting maintenance," Marcus narrated. "Note the plastic bag he's carrying." The video continued, showing Taylor exiting 40 minutes later, now carrying only the toolbox. The plastic bag was conspicuously absent. "Additionally," Marcus continued, switching to a second video, "this traffic camera footage shows Deputy Taylor's patrol vehicle parked near the apartment complex at the same time, when, according to official department logs, he was responding to an incident at Millfield High School across town." Donovan's face had darkened with barely contained rage. Phillips appeared stunned, clearly seeing this evidence for the first time. "Your Honor," Marcus said, "we have further evidence demonstrating a pattern of similar frame-ups, targeting women who rejected Sheriff Donovan's advances. And most disturbing of all—" "Enough!" Donovan shouted, rising to his feet. "This is a coordinated character assassination. These videos are obviously doctored. Reed isn't even a real lawyer. He's a con artist with a personal vendetta." The courtroom fell silent at this outburst. Judge Harrison stared at Marcus in confusion. "Is this true, Mr. Reed?" Are you not a licensed attorney? Marcus had anticipated this moment. Your Honor, my legal credentials are not the issue here. The evidence speaks for itself. But since Sheriff Donovan has raised the question, yes, I came to Millfield specifically to expose his corruption, which has victimized dozens of innocent people over the years, including my own mother, 15 years ago. The revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Reporters were now frantically taking notes or slipping out to file initial reports. Judge Harrison seemed at a complete loss. This proceeding has become irregular in the extreme. I'm inclined to— If I may, Your Honor, a new voice interrupted. Deputy Reynolds had entered the courtroom in uniform, carrying an evidence bag. I have information relevant to these proceedings. Donovan turned to his deputy in disbelief. Reynolds, what the hell do you think you're doing? Reynolds approached the bench. Your Honor, I'm submitting the toxicology report from Millfield General Hospital regarding Sophie Madison, the defendant's daughter. It confirms the presence of ipecac and a mild sedative consistent with what would induce temporary fever and illness. These substances were administered while the child was in Sheriff Donovan's custody at his lake house. This is outrageous. Donovan exploded, his face contorted with fury. Reynolds, you're fired. And as for you, Reed— He lunged toward Marcus, only to be restrained by the bailiff. Sheriff Donovan, Judge Harrison said, finding his voice at last, control yourself, or I'll have you removed from my courtroom. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Phillips appeared to be distancing himself from Donovan, physically moving his chair away. Whispers raced through the gallery. Marcus caught Vanessa's eye. She gave a slight nod, indicating that Christine Weber was already filing her story. Marcus played his final card. Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence. Sophie Madison is prepared to testify that she witnessed Sheriff Donovan placing an unknown substance in her hot chocolate at his lake house shortly before she became seriously ill. This was the breaking point. The courtroom erupted in outrage. Parents in the gallery looked particularly horrified at the suggestion of a law enforcement officer deliberately sickening a child. Judge Harrison banged his gavel repeatedly, struggling to regain control. This court will take a 30-minute recess. All parties to my chambers immediately. As the judge retreated and the bailiffs attempted to restore order, Donovan remained standing at the prosecution table, his carefully constructed image of authority crumbling before everyone's eyes. For the first time, he looked directly at Marcus with recognition dawning on his face. Reed, he said, his voice low but carrying in the chaotic room. Catherine Reed's boy. I remember you now. Marcus met his gaze steadily. 15 years too. Late, Sheriff. You should have remembered me when you decided to frame another single mother. In the judge's chambers, minutes later, the facade of normal legal proceedings had completely collapsed. Judge Harrison sat behind his desk, ashen-faced. Phillips stood by the window, physically separating himself from Donovan, who paced like a caged animal. This is all fabricated, Donovan insisted. Reed has orchestrated this entire circus for revenge. The evidence appears substantial, Phillips observed carefully. Particularly the toxicology report and security footage. Evidence that would never hold up if properly challenged, Donovan countered. Marcus stood beside Ellie, who had maintained remarkable composure throughout. The Capital City Times is running the story as we speak, he informed them, complete with financial records, witness statements, and details of at least 12 similar cases over the past decade. The State Bureau of Investigation has already been contacted. Judge Harrison put his head in his hands. This is a disaster. It's an opportunity, Marcus corrected, an opportunity to begin setting things right. What exactly are you proposing? Phillips asked cautiously. Complete dismissal of all charges against Ellie Madison, immediate resignation of Sheriff Donovan and Judge Harrison, full cooperation with the state investigation that will inevitably follow. You're insane, Donovan spat. I'm not resigning. Then you'll be arrested, Marcus said simply. The evidence of evidence tampering, kidnapping, and administering harmful substances to a minor is overwhelming, not to mention 15 years of systematic corruption. The room fell silent as the reality of the situation settled over everyone. Outside, they could hear the growing crowd in the courthouse hallways as news began to spread. Judge Harrison finally spoke. I'm dismissing the charges against Ms. Madison, all of them, with prejudice. He looked at Donovan. And I'm recusing myself from any further proceedings related to this matter due to conflict of interest. It was a partial victory, but Marcus pressed forward. And the sheriff's actions? Phillips surprised them all by responding. In light of the evidence presented, the The district attorney's office will be requesting a special prosecutor to review potential charges against Sheriff Donovan and any involved deputies. Donovan stared at his former allies in disbelief. You're both turning on me? After everything we've done together? What we've done, Judge Harrison said quietly, appears to be coming to an end. As they prepared to return to the courtroom, Ellie touched Marcus's arm. Is it really over? Almost, he assured her. Donovan will fight, but the evidence is too strong, the publicity too widespread. He can't make this disappear. For the first time since they'd met, Ellie smiled without reservation, the relieved smile of someone seeing the end of a nightmare. Then let's finish it. When Judge Harrison announced the dismissal of all charges against Ellie Madison, the courtroom erupted in applause. Locals who had witnessed Donovan's reign of intimidation for years were witnessing something they'd thought impossible, the system working against him, rather than for him. Marcus stood beside Ellie at the defense table, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the victory. This wasn't over yet. Donovan remained free, angry and dangerous. As if sensing Marcus's thoughts, the sheriff rose from his seat, his face contorted with barely contained rage. This is a travesty, Donovan declared loudly, addressing the gallery. More than the judge. A convicted felon manipulating our justice system for personal revenge. Judge Harrison, perhaps sensing an opportunity to salvage his own reputation, banged his gavel. Sheriff Donovan, you will control yourself in my courtroom. Your courtroom? Donovan laughed bitterly. We both know whose courtroom this really is, or was, until you lost your nerve. Phillips attempted to pull Donovan back to his seat, but the sheriff shook him off violently. You want to know the truth? Donovan continued, his voice rising. The real truth about your precious Ellie Madison. Marcus tensed, ready to object, but Donovan was beyond the reach of legal procedures now. She was just like all the others, Donovan sneered. Think they're too good for the law in this town. Think the rules don't apply to them. Sheriff, I'm warning you, Judge Harrison began. She needed to be taught a lesson, Donovan continued, seemingly unaware of the self-incrimination in his words. Just like Reed's mother needed to be taught a lesson all those years ago, thinking she could turn down the wrong man, embarrass me in public. The courtroom had fallen completely silent, reporters frantically taking notes, citizens recording on their phones. Donovan was publicly unraveling, confessing in his rage. You think I don't know how to handle women who don't know their place? Donovan's focus had narrowed to Ellie and Marcus, as if the crowded courtroom had disappeared. A few years in prison usually fixes their attitude, and if not, he shrugged with chilling casualness. Prison's a dangerous place. Accidents happen. Marcus felt a cold shock at this implication about his mother's death. Are you saying you arranged my mother's death in prison, Sheriff? He asked, his voice deadly calm. Donovan seemed to suddenly realize what he was revealing. He attempted to backtrack. I'm saying the justice system works in mysterious ways. But the damage was done. Judge Harrison, now visibly alarmed at being associated with what sounded increasingly like conspiracy to murder, acted decisively. Bailiff, take Sheriff Donovan into custody pending investigation of these statements, he ordered. Two bailiffs approached Donovan cautiously. The sheriff's hand moved toward his service weapon, causing several people to cry out in alarm. Don't be stupid, Donovan, Marcus warned. There are 50 witnesses in this room. For a tense moment, it seemed the sheriff might draw his weapon. Then, with a visible effort, he regained some measure of control, raising his hands slightly. This isn't over, he said coldly. Not by a long shot. As the bailiffs led Donovan away, Judge Harrison addressed the stunned courtroom. In light of these disturbing statements, I am requesting immediate state oversight of the Millfield Sheriff's Department. Court is adjourned until further notice. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Marcus and Ellie. Christine Weber, honouring their earlier agreement, directed the first questions. Mr. Reed, can you confirm that you came to Millfield specifically to expose Sheriff Donovan's corruption? Marcus faced the cameras directly. Yes. 15 years ago, my mother, Catherine Reed, was framed by then-Deputy Donovan on fabricated drug charges identical to those brought against Ms. Madison. She died in prison. I returned to ensure no other family would suffer the same fate, and you admit to impersonating an attorney to do so. I did what was necessary when the legitimate system failed. The evidence speaks for itself. Donovan and his accomplices have been framing innocent people for years. Another reporter pushed forward. Ms. Madison, did you know Mr. Reed wasn't really a lawyer? Ellie stood tall beside Marcus. Not initially, but when I learned the truth, I understood his motives. Without Marcus, I would likely be accepting a plea deal right now, separated from my daughter for years. The impromptu press conference continued for several minutes, until Vanessa managed to create an exit path through the crowd. As they reached Marcus's car, Deputy Reynolds approached, now wearing a jacket over his uniform shirt. State investigators are on their way, he reported. The department's being temporarily placed under state control. Judge Harrison is already negotiating some kind of immunity deal. And Donovan? Marcus asked. Being held at the county jail. They've assigned deputies from neighbouring counties to guard him. Nobody trusts our department right now. Reynolds hesitated. What he said in there, about your mother, was probably true. Marcus finished grimly. Her death was never properly investigated. It will be now, Reynolds promised, along with every other case Donovan touched. As Reynolds left to meet the arriving state authorities, Ellie touched Marcus's arm. We should get to Sophie. She'll be wondering what happened. The mention of Sophie grounded Marcus, pulling him back from the dark thoughts about his mother's fate. Of course, at Mrs. Jenkins' house, they found Sophie and the elderly woman watching the courthouse scene on television. The child launched herself at her mother the moment they entered. They said all the charges are gone, Sophie exclaimed. You don't have to go to jail. That's right, sweetheart, Ellie confirmed, holding her daughter tightly. It's all over now. And the sheriff? Mrs. Jenkins asked quietly, as Sophie chattered. Excitedly. In custody, Marcus replied, likely facing multiple charges after his courtroom outburst. I never thought I'd see the day, the old woman marvelled. Donovan seemed untouchable. Vanessa approached Marcus as the others celebrated. Jackson's monitoring police radio. Taylor and 2 other deputies have already fled town. State police are setting up checkpoints. The whole system is collapsing, Marcus observed. Which means our work here is done, Vanessa pointed out. We should prepare our exit. The DA might overlook your impersonation given the circumstances, but it's not guaranteed. Marcus watched Ellie and Sophie, their relief and joy palpable after weeks of fear. Not yet. There's still one more thing I need to do. Later that afternoon, as state investigators swarmed the sheriff's department and courthouse, Marcus sat alone in his hotel room, watching the news coverage. Every channel carried the story. Sheriff arrested after courtroom confession. Systematic corruption exposed. In Millfield. His phone rang. Jackson calling from his surveillance position. Marcus, we've got movement at Donovan's house. His wife is packing suitcases into her car. Looks like she's planning to leave town. Let her go, Marcus instructed. She's not our concern. And what about us? Vanessa's getting nervous about staying. The longer we're here, the more likely someone starts asking serious questions about our methods. Marcus understood their concerns. In normal circumstances, they would have been gone already, disappearing as completely as they had appeared. But Millfield was different. Unfinished business remained. One more day, Marcus decided. I need to see Donovan one more time. That's risky, Jackson warned. State authorities are all over the jail. I'll find a way, Marcus said, his mind already formulating a plan. Tell Vanessa to prepare for departure tomorrow. One way or another, we'll be done by then. As he ended the call, Marcus opened his laptop to find dozens of messages flooding in, from attorneys throughout the state offering to represent him, from journalists seeking exclusive interviews, and most significantly, from other women who claimed to have been framed by Donovan over the years. The full extent of Donovan's corruption was still unfolding, but one thing was already clear. Marcus's mission had succeeded beyond his expectations. The system that had protected Donovan for so long was now working to dismantle his legacy of corruption, but personal vindication remained elusive. Despite Donovan's courtroom outburst, despite the collapsing house of cards, Marcus still needed one thing, to look the man in the eye and hear him acknowledge what he had done to Catherine Reed 15 years ago. Without that closure, justice, no matter how public or extensive, would remain incomplete. The county jail visitors' room was empty except for Marcus and the guard Reynolds had arranged to give them privacy. Marcus sat at the metal table, waiting, his expression carefully neutral despite the storm of emotions beneath the surface. The door opened, and Donovan entered in an orange jumpsuit, the same dehumanizing uniform Ellie had been forced to wear. His hands were cuffed in front of him, his usual confident posture diminished by custody and the rapid collapse of his power. You, Donovan said flatly as he sat across from Marcus. I should have recognized you sooner. You weren't looking, Marcus replied. You never really saw any of us as people, just obstacles or opportunities. Donovan leaned back, studying Marcus with cold calculation. So this whole elaborate scheme, the fake lawyer credentials, building a case against me, All of it was revenge for your junkie mother? Marcus didn't rise to the bait. Catherine Reed wasn't a drug user. She was a single mother working 2 jobs to support her son. You framed her because she refused your advances, just like you framed Ellie Madison and at least 11 other women we've identified so far. Prove it. Donovan challenged, though his bravado seemed hollow now. We already have, Marcus said. Simply, your financial records, the pattern of anonymous tips, Taylor's testimony, he's cooperating now, trying to save himself, and your own courtroom confession. It's over, Donovan. The sheriff's expression hardened. If you're expecting an apology, you'll be waiting a long time. I don't need your apology. I need your acknowledgement. Tell me exactly what happened to my mother. Donovan laughed mirthlessly. Why would I do that? Because it's your only leverage now. Marcus explained calmly. The state has enough to put you away for decades, but a full confession, details about cases they don't yet know about, that might be worth something in plea negotiations. A calculating look crossed Donovan's face as he considered this angle. After a long moment, he leaned forward. Your mother embarrassed me at the diner where she worked. I asked her out. She not only refused, but laughed about it. In front of others. His voice carried the lingering sting of wounded pride. Nobody did that to me. Not in my town. So you planted drugs in her apartment, Marcus prompted, maintaining his composure despite the rage building inside him. Taylor did. He was a rookie then, eager to impress. Same basic setup we've used since. Anonymous tip, timed search when the target is away, plant the evidence, make the arrest. Donovan spoke clinically, as if describing standard procedure rather than criminal conspiracy. And her death in prison. You implied you arranged that. Donovan's expression became guarded. I didn't kill her, if that's what you're asking, but I made sure she got assigned to the state facility with the worst conditions, put in a word with some guards I knew to make her life difficult. What happened after that? Pneumonia, inadequate medical care. That wasn't directly my doing, but it was. And they both knew it. Donovan had set in motion a chain of events designed to break Catherine Reed, knowing the system would do his dirty work for him. Did you know she had a son? Did you think about what would happen to me? Marcus asked, allowing emotion to enter his voice for the first time. Not my problem, Donovan replied coldly. The foster system exists for a reason. Marcus absorbed this final confirmation of Donovan's callousness. For 15 years, he had carried the weight of uncertainty, whether his mother's death was tragic coincidence or deliberate malice. Now he knew. You've built quite a life for yourself, Donovan observed, changing tactics. Con artist, fake, lawyer. I'm betting there's a long list of crimes in your past, Reed. You really think you're walking away from this clean? I never expected to, Marcus admitted. But unlike you, I was willing to pay that price for justice. The former sheriff studied him with newfound curiosity. You know, we're not so different. Both willing to bend rules to get what we want. The difference, Marcus corrected, is that I target the corrupt and powerful. You prey on the vulnerable and innocent. A knock at the door signaled the end of their time. Marcus stood, having gotten what he came for. For what it's worth, Donovan said as Marcus turned to leave. Your mother didn't break. Most of them do, accept the plea, beg for mercy. She maintained her innocence to the end. Stubborn, Marcus paused, like her son. Outside the jail, Vanessa waited in the car. Did you get what you needed? She asked, as Marcus slid into the passenger seat. Yes, he replied quietly. He admitted everything. And was it worth it? This whole operation, the risks we took, your career essentially ended now that your methods are public. Marcus considered the question as they drove through Millfield. The town already felt different. Citizens walking with heads held higher, deputies keeping low profiles, Judge Harrison's name being removed from the courthouse entrance. It was worth it, he decided. Not just for my mother, but for Ellie, Sophie, and everyone else Donovan victimized. They drove to Ellie's apartment, where she was packing boxes. The dismissal of charges had allowed her to return home, though. She'd decided to move to a new place. Too many painful memories in these rooms. Marcus, she greeted him with a smile. Sophie's at school today, first day back. The other kids are treating her like a hero. She is one, Marcus replied. Her testimony was crucial. Ellie set down the box she was holding. The state prosecutor called. They want my formal statement about everything that happened. They're building a comprehensive case against Donovan, Taylor, and Judge Harrison. Good. The more witnesses, the stronger the case. They asked about you too, Ellie added carefully. About your legal credentials or lack thereof. Marcus nodded. I expected that. What did you tell them? That you did what the real authorities wouldn't or couldn't. That without you, I'd be in prison and Sophie would be in foster care. She met his gaze directly. I told them they'd have to go through me if they wanted to charge you with anything. This unexpected loyalty touched Marcus deeply. Thank you. But you don't need to protect me. You protected us, Ellie said simply. Even before you knew us. A news alert on Ellie's phone interrupted them. Breaking news about the Donovan case. They watched together as the State Attorney General announced a special task force to investigate all cases handled by Donovan during his tenure, with a focus on identifying wrongful convictions. They're going to review my mother's case, Marcus realised aloud, and posthumously clear her name, Ellie added softly. That evening, a small gathering formed at Mrs. Jenkins's house. Ellie and Sophie, Vanessa and Jackson, Deputy Reynolds, now Acting Sheriff Reynolds by state appointment, and several women who had previously been targeted by Donovan. It wasn't exactly a celebration, but rather a communion of survivors. Sophie had created a new drawing, which she presented to Marcus with solemn ceremony. It showed the courthouse with tiny figures on the steps. Her mother, herself, Marcus, and Mrs. Jenkins, all holding hands beneath a bright sun. This is for when we win, she explained. And we did win, right? Marcus studied the child's hopeful face. Yes, Sophie, we won. Later, as the others chatted in the living room, Reynolds pulled Marcus aside. The state investigators found a safe in Donovan's office. He reported quietly. Documents going back 15 years, cases that never made it to court, blackmail material, records of payoffs. Your mother's name was there, along with dozens of others. Evidence he kept as insurance, Marcus surmised. Reynolds nodded. It's all being catalogued now, but I wanted you to know there's a clear paper trail connecting Donovan to your mother's case. His conviction is virtually guaranteed. And the others involved. Judge Harrison is cooperating fully, implicating Donovan in exchange for leniency. Taylor was apprehended trying to cross the state line. Phillips is claiming ignorance, but financial records suggest otherwise. Reynolds managed a grim smile. The whole corrupt system is coming down. As the impromptu gathering wound down, Marcus found himself on Mrs. Jenkins' porch with Ellie, both watching the sunset over Millfield. What happens now? She asked. For you, I mean. Vanessa and Jackson leave tomorrow, Marcus replied. As for me, I'm not sure yet. You could stay, Ellie suggested, her tone carefully casual. Millfield could use someone like you, someone who knows how to recognise corruption and isn't afraid to fight it. The offer hung in the air between them, unexpected and tempting, in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. I've never stayed anywhere for long, he admitted. Not since foster care. Maybe it's time to try, Ellie said softly. Sophie would miss you. Just Sophie? Marcus asked, allowing himself a small smile. Ellie met his gaze directly. Not just Sophie. As night fell over Millfield, Marcus considered possibilities he'd never allowed himself before. For 15 years, his life had been defined by his mother's case. Planning, preparing, searching for the perfect opportunity to expose Donovan. He'd never thought beyond that mission, never considered what might come after justice was served. Now, with Donovan behind bars and the truth finally exposed, Marcus faced a new and unfamiliar challenge, figuring out who he was beyond the con, beyond the revenge, beyond the carefully constructed personas he'd hidden behind for so long. And for the first time since his mother's death, that uncertainty felt not like a burden, but like freedom. 6 months passed, bringing changes to Millfield that few would have thought possible. The courthouse facade had been pressure-washed, symbolic of the cleansing that had occurred within its walls. Judge Harrison had resigned, replaced by a respected jurist from the state capital. The sheriff's department operated under new leadership, with Reynolds implementing reforms that emphasized community service over intimidation. And on Main Street, where Ellie's diner had once stood, a new establishment had opened its doors. Second Chance's Cafe, with Ellie Madison as proprietor. The grand opening drew a substantial crowd. Former customers mingled with new faces, sampling the expanded menu and admiring the renovated space. A prominent sign behind the counter proclaimed, "Coffee, Community, Justice," a motto that had become something of a local rallying cry. Sophie, now 9 years old and missing another tooth, proudly showed visitors to their tables, her confidence blossoming in the months since Donovan's downfall. She wore a small apron with "Assistant Manager" embroidered on the pocket. A birthday gift from Marcus. "Mr. Reed!" she called out, spotting him entering through the front door. "Mum said you might not make it back in time." Marcus smiled, accepting her enthusiastic hug. I wouldn't miss this for anything. The hearing ended early. Did they finally clear Grandma's name? Sophie asked, having absorbed the details of Catherine Reed's story over the months. Yes, Marcus confirmed, his voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. The state has officially exonerated her. They're even creating a special fund for families affected by Donovan's corruption. Sophie nodded with the serious approval of a child who understood more than most her age. Good. I put your usual table in the corner. Mum's been checking the door every 5 minutes. The cafe was Ellie's dream, realised, funded partially by a settlement from the county for her wrongful arrest, supplemented by a community fundraiser, organised by Mrs. Jenkins. It represented everything Donovan had nearly taken from her: independence, community connection, and a future for her daughter. Marcus made his way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and thanks from townspeople, who now knew his full story. The Capital City Times series on the Millfield conspiracy had won Christine Weber a regional journalism award and had made Marcus an unlikely folk hero, the conman who had conned a corrupt system for justice. He found Ellie in the kitchen, directing her small staff with calm efficiency. When she saw him, her professional demeanour briefly gave way to relief. You made it, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. How was the hearing? Final nail in Donovan's coffin, Marcus reported. 25 years. No possibility of parole. For 15. The judge cited the extraordinary breach of public trust and systematic victimization of vulnerable citizens. Ellie exhaled slowly. It's really over then. It's over, Marcus confirmed. Taylor got 12 years in a plea deal for testimony. Harrison got 5 years probation and permanent disbarment for cooperation. Phillips is still awaiting trial, but the evidence against him is substantial. They were interrupted by Mrs. Jenkins, who had become something of a local celebrity herself after her role in protecting Sophie came to light. There you are, the elderly woman said, giving Marcus a surprisingly strong hug. Just in time for the speech. Speech? Marcus raised an eyebrow at Ellie, who shrugged innocently. The people want to hear from the man who brought down Donovan, Mrs. Jenkins explained. Just a few words. Despite his reluctance for public speaking, Marcus found himself standing behind the counter minutes later, the cafe crowd falling silent as Ellie introduced him. Most of you know Marcus Reed's story now, she said, how he returned to Millfield to expose the corruption that had taken his mother from him. What you might not know is how many other lives he saved in the process, including mine and Sophie's. Marcus surveyed the gathered faces, not just victims of Donovan's schemes, but everyday citizens who had lived under his shadow for years. Their expressions showed something he hadn't expected, not just gratitude, but acceptance. I came to Millfield with a single purpose, Marcus began, unaccustomed to speaking so openly, to expose the truth about William Donovan and find justice for my mother. What I didn't expect was to find a community worth fighting for. He gestured around the cafe. This place represents what Millfield really is, not Donovan's kingdom of fear, but a town of good people who deserve honest leadership and fair treatment. Second chances isn't just a name, it's what all of us have been given. The crowd applauded warmly. As the celebration continued, Marcus slipped outside for a moment of quiet. The main street of Millfield looked different now. Storefronts repainted, new businesses opening, citizens walking with their heads held high rather than averted in caution. Vanessa's sleek car pulled up to the curb, and she emerged looking as elegant as ever in her designer suit. Quite the hometown hero, she observed wryly, joining him on the sidewalk. I almost didn't recognize you without the fake lawyer costume. Marcus smiled. What brings you back to Millfield? I thought Boston was keeping you busy. It is. The Hamilton investment firm con is proceeding perfectly. She studied him carefully. Which is why I'm here. We need you, Marcus. Jackson's handling the technical side, but the face-to-face work, that's always been your specialty. I'm not doing that anymore, Marcus reminded her. So you're really going through with this? Settling down in small-town America, playing cafe owner's boyfriend, weekend dad to the kid? Vanessa sounded genuinely puzzled. After 15 years, in the game, you're just walking away. Inside the cafe, Marcus could see Sophie showing customers her latest drawings, Ellie moving confidently among the tables, Mrs. Jenkins holding court with some of the older residents. A life he'd never imagined for himself, yet somehow felt more authentic than any identity he'd ever assumed. I'm not walking away, he clarified. I'm walking toward something. Vanessa followed his gaze, understanding dawning in her expression. You're in love with her. Both of them, really. Marcus didn't deny it. They saved me as much as I saved them. And what will Marcus Reed do in Millfield? You've exposed the biggest corruption scandal in county history. Seems like a tough act to follow. It was a question Marcus had been asking himself. His bank accounts, filled with proceeds from previous cons, would sustain him for years. But purpose, that was something money couldn't buy. The state attorney general has offered me a position, he revealed, consulting on anti-corruption initiatives, reviewing cases with patterns similar to Donovan's. Apparently, my unique perspective is valuable. Vanessa laughed incredulously. The Conman turned law enforcement consultant. Now that's ironic. Poetic justice. Marcus countered with a smile. They watched as Reynolds, now officially elected, Sheriff Reynolds, arrived at the cafe with his family, greeted warmly by the community he now served with integrity. You know, Vanessa said thoughtfully, when we started working together, I always thought your talent was wasted on small-time cons. You could read people, systems, find the weaknesses. I figured we'd end up taking down banks or hedge funds. Not small-town sheriffs. Those targets deserve what's coming to them too, Marcus acknowledged. But this was personal, and now it's still personal, just in a different way. Marcus gestured toward the cafe. For the first time since I was 13, I belong somewhere. To someone. Vanessa studied him for a long moment, then nodded with unexpected understanding. I always knew you'd be the first to leave the game. Too much conscience for a proper con artist. Inside the cafe, Sophie had spotted them through the window and was waving enthusiastically. Ellie joined her, their matching smiles visible even from the street. They're waiting for you, Vanessa observed. Your family. The word still felt strange to Marcus. Family. Something he'd lost so long ago he'd almost forgotten what it meant. Yet here it was, offered to him in this unlikely place, by people who knew exactly who and what he was. Will you come in? He asked Vanessa. Meet them properly. She hesitated, then shook her head. Another time, perhaps. Some of us aren't ready for retirement just yet. She handed him a business card. If you ever miss the old days, call me. We made a good team. As Vanessa drove away, Marcus tucked the card into his pocket, knowing he would keep it but doubting he would ever use it. The life he had built in Millfield over these past months, helping Reynolds reform the sheriff's department, supporting Ellie as she established her cafe, watching Sophie grow more confident each day, contained more meaning than all his years of cons combined. He returned to the cafe, where Ellie met him with a questioning look. Everything okay? She asked. Everything's perfect, he assured her, taking her hand. Later, as the grand opening wound down and the last customers departed, Marcus found himself alone with Ellie and Sophie in the cafe. The child was arranging her drawings on a community bulletin board, artwork depicting Millfield's transformation and her own family's journey. I have something for you, Marcus said, producing a small box from his pocket. A cafe opening. Gift. Ellie opened it to find a key. What's this? My storage unit, he explained. I've kept everything there. The fake credentials, the disguises, the tools of the con. I won't need them anymore. She understood the significance immediately. You're really staying. For good, he confirmed. If you'll have me. Sophie bounded over, immediately curious about the key. Is it treasure? Is Mr. Reed moving in with us officially now? Ellie laughed, glancing at Marcus with a mixture of love and amusement. That's a conversation for another day, sweetie. As Sophie returned to her artwork, Ellie leaned against Marcus, both watching the child who had, against all odds, remained joyful and resilient through everything. You know, Ellie said softly, when Donovan first arrested me, I thought my life was over, that Sophie would grow up without me, that everything I'd worked for was lost. And now? She gestured around the cafe, her dream realised, and then to Sophie, safe and thriving. Now I have more than I ever thought possible, including a former con artist who turned out to be the most honest man I've ever known. Outside, Millfield continued its quiet transformation. The courthouse lights shone on a justice system, slowly regaining the community's trust. The sheriff's department patrolled with a new ethic of service rather than intimidation, and ordinary citizens walked the streets without fear, their faith in the possibility of change restored. Marcus Reed, who had arrived 6 months ago bent on revenge, found himself instead embraced by redemption. The con that had begun as his mother's justice had evolved into something far more profound, a second chance not just for Ellie and Sophie, but for himself. As he stood with his arms around the family he had never expected to find, Marcus knew, with absolute certainty, that this was no act, no assumed identity to be discarded when convenient. This was real. This was home. And for a man who had spent 15 years living lies in pursuit of a single truth, that realization was the most powerful justice of all. If this story of redemption and justice touched your heart, subscribe to our channel for more. Tales that remind us that sometimes the most unexpected heroes are the ones who've known injustice themselves.